Hello and welcome to the Weekly Stuff Podcast with Jonathan Lack.
And Sean Chapman.
We are here to talk about stuff. This week on the show, we are diving deep with a big review of Doom Eternal.
Yes. The Doom 2 Hell on Earth, as it is titled in my heart.
Doom 2 Hell on Earth 2.
Yes.
2020.
Doom 2 Hell on Earth, here we go again.
That would have been fantastic.
Yeah.
Doom Eternal is like whatever its fine title. That would have been a great title.
Yes.
I will admit, being slightly disappointed that they didn't just call this Doom 2 Hell on Earth and just keep that going.
Yeah.
And then they make a game called Doom 3 that's like a proper uncontroversial, everyone loves this Doom 3.
It's just Doom 3, only you can use the flashlight whenever you want.
Yes, exactly.
This is the classic Doom 3 joke. I've never even played Doom 3. All I know about Doom 3 is that joke.
I think that has been long since patched in.
Yes. Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So we're going to talk about Doom Eternal. It's really good.
Yeah, it is.
So that's our spoiler-free review. You can also hear last week we did some spoiler-free impressions. We will let you know before there's spoilers. I don't really know how you spoil Doom. Shit blows up and you gorify shit. But yeah, Doom Eternal, we'll be talking about that. I'll be talking a little bit more about Animal Crossing New Horizons because I've actually been able to play more than a week of it, which is... last week I played like 2 days, which in Animal Crossing time is nothing. Yeah. So now I have a real sense of things, and that game is also fantastic. Very different than Doom. Although Isabelle really, she comes in and she just starts chopping heads off. It's wild.
Yeah, Nintendo just saw all the fan art that people made of the mashup of Doom Guy and Isabelle. They're like, let's just bring a little bit of that energy into actual Animal Crossing. So if you say the wrong thing to her, she will just disembowel you with a knife in her arm.
Well, you know how in other games, residents would just kind of move away over time? Mm-hmm. Now you can say, I want this resident gone, and you will get Isabella doing the glory kill.
Yes. Yeah, there's just a lot of her, ripping skulls open, chopping people into like 5 pieces. It's really good.
Breaking their arm out of their skin and shoving it through their skull, which is the best glory kill in Doom Eternal, I just have to say.
Or sticking the knife into their eye and then popping it out with like a comical, pop sound effect.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great. Okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We will be talking about all of that, couple of other little things. We have one piece of video game news this week about something related to Sean's favorite game of all time.
It's true.
So that'll be cool. For housekeeping, I just want to remind everyone about the Weekly Stuff Wordcast, which is my weekly newsletter, which you can go to weeklystuff.substack.com. Subscribe for free. Comes to your inbox. Comes a couple times a week. It's coronavirus threw all of my plans for that off. And I know that is a very minor cost of coronavirus, but... it's meant, like right now, we were going to be in the middle of a series on the Daniel Craig Bond films, and I'm like, well, that movie got pushed. Not going to do that right now. So I've had to come up with some other stuff. So this week's actually was really fun. I did kind of impromptu. I wound up redoing my top 10 favorite films of all time. Now it's a top 12 list. It's an even dozen. And it's in alphabetical order because I'm like, you know what? On the podcast, we rank things, but I don't have to rank things here. So we're going to do it alphabetically. And it's specifically, it's sort of my version of the list everyone is doing of like, what to stream during coronavirus, which I've thought has been kind of a dumb exercise people are doing because it's like, you can find whatever you want. So I'm like, here are my favorite things. And here's where to find them. Mostly, one of the movies is an obscure Japanese movie that you cannot stream. Here or in Japan, I checked. You can't even do a VPN trick. Just doesn't exist. You've got to import it. And I felt like I could have one of those on my list. Mm-hmm. And that was fair, because I could have done more. But that was fun. So that was this week, and we'll figure out... Oh, next week's, for Wednesday, is a fun one. I've kind of been planning this before we get the final reveal of who the fighters are going to be. The top 10 Smash Brothers characters I want in the next round of Smash Brothers DLC. So that'll be our Wednesday column on Wednesday, April 1st. And it should be a fun one.
Awesome.
So, yeah. Yeah, so that's just the housekeeping stuff. Last week we had part 2 of our Evangelion talk, so if you want to go over to... It's either in the weekly stuff feed, or if you just want the conversations on their own, over on Weekly Suit Gundam. We have 2 parts on Evangelion, so that's all done. And next week we're going to be going back into the Gundam trenches with Mobile Fighter G Gundam.
Fuck yeah.
So lots of fun stuff coming up. But Sean, I think our stuff portion of the show has transformed into our coronavirus lockdown check-in.
Yeah, because I mean, the other stuff I've done is literally only playing Doom Eternal and watching Mobile Fighter G Gundam is basically the only things I've done last week, other than like frantically trying to prepare for what the fuck teaching looks like
So let's update the people on the state of the world. So we live in Colorado. This week, the governor, Jared Polis of Colorado, did initiate a statewide lockdown. So we are legally mandated to be in our homes. You and I live like a block away, so I think this is okay. But other than that, go to the grocery store if you need to. Be careful. I sanitize everything. I did read an article that I do not have to be sanitizing the food itself, but I have been doing that on the boxes. Just, I don't know. Sure. Just why not? Can I tell you my fun story, though? My fun $120 mistake?
Okay, yes.
Yeah. So I've been doing the grocery shopping for my family because they are old and I don't want them going out.
Yeah.
And I've
Same
been,
with me,
my stepdad is a shut-in, and that's great. It's been very easy. My mom keeps saying things like, that could be fun just to get out of the house. And I'm like, no, just to get out of the house is not an if you want to walk the dogs just to get out of the house, that's great. If you want to go to an obscure market in downtown Denver you just heard about, no, I will lock you to your door because I don't want you to die, Mom. So anyway, I think it's good I'm here to take care of them. But anyway, so I go and I have my little routine. I have a box of the hand sanitizing wipes, and when I have gloves. I wipe down the cart. Buy everything. If I have contactless credit cards, luckily, which has been very nice because they don't have to touch anyone else. But if I have to scan them, I've been sanitizing those down, that sort of thing. They have hand sanitizing stations at our local grocery store on the way out, which is great because before they put those out, what I was doing was dropping my food off in my car, running back in, washing my hands, and then coming back out because I don't have any hand sanitizer because you can't fucking buy it. And then I've also been sanitizing my phone because my phone is where I had my grocery list on, and I was touching it and I didn't. So, but I also realized this week. So I have the Apple AirPods headphones. And I love those. So, like, there's one of my favorite things because they're very easy. They're the kind of headphones I like.
The absolute bane of my fucking existence because every fucking 14-year-old has them, and they're just a massive pain in the ass. But yeah, continue.
I'm so sorry, Sean.
Yeah, they're the worst. I hate you, Apple. I hate you and everything you stand for.
I think I use them responsibly, but
sure.
I don't. Do kids really just use them in class?
Oh, it's an endless, constant. It's the worst because
we're one day, Sean, going to have to have a conversation about this because. I don't remember about you, but I know, like, I did not own a smartphone in high school.
No, I got my first iPhone. It was like a graduation gift.
Me too.
From graduating high school. Yeah.
So you and I feel like we're probably the oldest you can be and still say that, right?
Yes, yeah.
Or youngest, or whatever I mean. And so, like, because we do not have the experience quite of, like, what high school is like with smartphones and stuff. And I would be fascinated. I feel like it's more than we can talk about today. But I want to hear your rant on that at some point. But anyway, what was I saying? So my AirPods, though, I had been wearing them in the store listening to stuff while I was shopping to keep the anxiety down. And so I was like, oh, you know what? I was touching these. I should just quickly, and I just wiped them with my hand sanitizing wipe a little bit. And the left one died.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Just completely dead. I should have thought about that. Yeah. I didn't. They're like water resistant. I don't know why. So I don't know. I'm not a scientist.
It's not water. It's not what you're putting in there.
It's alcohol, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not exactly supposed to withstand you just sort of directly disinfecting it.
Yeah. Luckily, that same day, Amazon happened to have a $40 discount on the AirPods, so I just bought new ones. I needed to anyway. Mine I've owned for like 3 years, and they were so close to being dead anyway. Like the battery was just so shot in those things. So not the worst thing in the world, but that's an example of where you can in fact be too cautious. Or just stupid.
Yes, yeah. I feel like you have to be doing something really wrong with those AirPods for you to get coronavirus from them. You need to like really be like rubbing a weird part of it and sticking it in your ear after you've like been touching bad stuff.
They say don't touch your mouth, nose, ear.
Yes, you don't want to touch any cavity, but you also again the AirPods shouldn't be in contact and like the part that goes into your ear with anything.
It's a good point. Anyway, I
don't know what you get up to with your AirPods is your business. Like I'm not telling you that you did. I don't know. I don't know what you do with your AirPods.
I have paid for my mistakes to the tune of about $130. So anyway, So I don't know. And I really haven't had to prepare a ton for next week when we go back to so my campus. We're going back to digital campus next week. I haven't had a ton to prepare because I'm a teaching assistant, so like those decisions are a little bit above my pay grade. But I did have to like kind of hound my professor, be like, so what is the procedure we're doing? Because if we need to all be on the same page, we finally got all on the same page. That's good. I think everything seems fine. I had to do one paper proposal, and so I finally had to do some actual work, and so that was weird. But yeah, it's been a weird time. I'm so unsure of what this is all going to look like next week.
Yeah.
And you have it 100 times worse than me. So how has your prep been going?
It's weird because it's like I wish that we had. Because, I mean, so, like, we do have, basically, they're giving us, like, Mondays each week as a, like, prep day, basically.
That's nice.
But I do wish that there was, like, a little bit more of a, once it became clear that this is going to be, like, a longer thing, like, maybe instead of having this, like, well, I guess, you know, you're on spring break, but maybe spend that spring break where, like, it would have been better probably to say, like, okay, we're going to take a half week when we get back after spring break.
Yeah.
So that way you don't feel pressured to do work on spring break, because I needed the spring break anyways as a break period. If the rest of this shit wasn't happening, teaching is already stressful enough that you need the break periods. Yeah, so and it's, you know, it's that thing of like, you can't, I have not been trying to do too much because I feel like you can't prepare. If you like, I feel like I would over prepare stuff and underuse it,
right,
or be in a situation where it wouldn't make sense to use. Because one of the hardest things to prep for is this like lack of understanding what other teachers are going to do, because since there's no standards and no, like, this is not a thing that the public school system has ever had to do before, there's no sort of like standard rules for what's going on. So it's that sense of like, I don't want to give them too much because I have no idea how much other teachers are giving them to do. And since the day isn't structured as clearly, there's a certain limit, you know, maybe, you know, some AP teachers, you know, ignore this limit on terms of like homework stuff. But generally speaking, there's a limit to how much a student is going to be asked to do in a day of schoolwork, that when it's all digital, those boundaries become much more mutable. And it's like trying to remind myself that it's like, I need to make sure that in my head, this is like an hour's worth of work. This is not something that like, just because they're not sitting in front of me for that like hour of class period, doesn't mean it gives you this opportunity to like pile more stuff on top of them. You should like be scaling back. And so it's like trying to figure out that balance with no feedback, no like strong like systems with which to gauge how well you're doing.
I was just thinking like, you can't just like walk down the hall to like the math teacher and be like, what are you giving them today? Does this work or something like that?
And you can't, and it's like much harder to get immediate feedback from the students because they're not, you have to like rely on emails or messages on Google Classroom instead of just being like, hey, does this make sense? Like, hey, are you doing your work? Hey, like all those kinds of like normal kind of like classroom management stuff just doesn't exist.
Do they all have their AirPods in, or are they listening to you intently?
Do you have access to the internet at like these times of day? Do you have access to a device that can get on the internet? Like all those kinds of things. It's like, fuck, I don't know.
That's one thing that makes me really sad and uneasy about it on some level is the technology. You know, I think we have a natural expectation everyone has something, but obviously not everyone does, especially in a public school system.
Yeah.
So, again, hats off to you and all your colleagues for doing the hard work.
Thank you, because it's weird.
Because also, the kids are going to fucking need it.
Yeah, no, and it's because I did just get an email from admin earlier today that was just like it was a nice like kind of reinforcing what my perspective on it was, which was them saying like, make sure you're not giving them too much. Like, you know, dial it back from what you'd normally expect, because for like all the obvious reasons to do that. And like admin saying that, maybe like, you know, because I've talked to some of my coworkers and colleagues and they've had slightly different perspectives, and I've been like, I don't think that's the right approach. And then having admin say like, this is kind of the broad guidelines, the sort of idea that we have, because they obviously don't have anything well constructed for it, because it's utterly unprecedented in our public schooling system. At least in like the modern era of education in America. So it's like, this is sort of what we're expecting. And then there was like and everyone's going to have your department meetings on Zoom tomorrow for Monday for us. And it was looking at like the department meeting guidelines and just feeling like, there's so much to talk about that like asking us to like do like, what are the main topics you want to hit in your department meeting? It's like, I don't fucking know, man. Like there's to everything and nothing. I don't know.
If Back to the Future 2 was made today and they did the thing where like Marty wants to do a scheme to like like bet on stuff and like make money, it would be going back 3 months from now and buying stock in Zoom.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
He would do that, and but he would leave the note, and then Biff would buy stocks in Zoom, and the world wouldn't really get any worse because he's just Donald Trump.
Yeah, or like you just, I don't know if there's like the main hand sanitizer company, but investing a lot into them.
Purell.
Yeah, it's into Purell. Like that's probably would have been a smart business move.
Whoever makes toilet paper, they're getting. I mean, it's going to go back down, but like they're definitely getting goosed right now. Mm-hmm. So anyway. Yeah, it's wild, Sean. How do you replace hitting kids on the knuckles with rulers digitally?
I just hack into their computers, and I just I hack into their school email accounts because some of them I legitimately could do that because and then I just from that I don't know, I send some sort of like a link to like some weird like porn or something to their parents. Like there's lots of things I could do. I could honestly wreak way more havoc digitally than I could physically in the classroom. So
that's true. Boy, I hope this doesn't come back to bite you.
I mean, the advantage is that like their ability to annoy me is significantly lessened digitally than it is physically.
That's very true.
So there's far less temptation to do anything untoward.
Can I tell one story of a bureaucratic kind of clusterfuck on our end?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So one thing that looked like kind of a silver lining for us grad students is, for God knows, so to back up, most of the classes you take as a grad student are what's called seminar classes, which is like you and up to 15 other people in a room, hopefully around some kind of circular table, because it's discussion based. It's fully, the teacher is more like a leader of a discussion in that sense, right? And at most schools, the way you do seminars for grad students is they're once a week. They're about 3 hours long. You do the readings over the course of the week. You come and you have one big discussion. For some reason, there's one department at the University of Iowa that is not allowed to do that, and it's the Department of Cinematic Arts. And
what do you mean they're not allowed to do that?
It's like the way space in the building we use, they won't let them block 3-hour blocks for classes. So,
like in my head, it was just there's some like stuffy person just being like, we will, like, cinematic arts is not proper academia. They will never be allowed to have proper seminars.
We also can't use the really nice, like, $1 million screening room for film screenings.
What do they use it for?
Clubs. It's honestly, it's the most baffling thing. We're all confused by it, and that I'm including all the like cinema admin people. We're all confused by it. Anyway, so usually our seminars are done twice a week for an hour and 15 minutes, which is just never enough time. It's just always bad. And so we were like, oh well, if we're doing it digitally, we could just do it that way. We could do our like 2.5-hour Zoom session once a week, and that makes it easier for everyone. And so people were talking about that, and then we got an email from like the dean of the whole college saying like, just remember, you can't hold Zoom meetings outside of the scheduled class times for physical classes.
What?
I don't know why, but we can't do it. So the workaround is like, we'll just do our class times during our normal screening times, because those are blocked for 2.5 hours.
Yeah, you can watch movies whenever the fuck you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like that's kind of how we're doing it, but it's just like, but that means that we're having our Zoom meetings at 7:30 at night. It's so weird. It's so weird. What does that rule? I could get it, I guess, for some undergrad stuff, but like the whole point of grad school is you take the fucking gloves off, right? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things of like, there are like the rules and structures that are put into place to mandate physical learning do not apply to digital learning, but when that's what you're literally doing, like, so it's like, for us, we like literally have to have school days that last a certain amount of time. Like, we literally have to have school days that run from 7 to 3. Yeah. And you have to have a certain number of like hours of learning for it to count. You have to have like certain like laws around and like guidelines around attendance and things like that don't make sense in a digital format. So you just have to sort of fake it. But some of them are ones where you're like, I don't know if this is a thing that like it actually has to be this way because of like weird, the ways that the rules are being applied to a situation that shouldn't apply to them. Or if it's just the person telling you this is someone who has not thought through the actual like potentialities of remote learning, which is like, they don't need to all log in at 11 o'clock or whatever for my 5th hour class. Like, they can log in whenever they want on Tuesday, and I'm fine with them as long as they're doing the work. Like, that kind of stuff. It's like, how much is this is the rules that you're trying to sort of force on there, and how much of it is that, like, you haven't thought about actually what, like, the teaching scenario is in this sort of structure.
Yeah. Well, it'll be fascinating. I think we will have a fun segment next week now when we're both
once I have, like, proper, like, a week of remote learning that's not the, like, triage week, which is what the one before spring break was, which is, like, I was pretty sure that it was going to get extended, but since it wasn't officially extended, I couldn't, like, set things in motion that were, like, and this is for like, the next month, these are the things, like, I couldn't say that because... Yeah. I would have gotten in big trouble if I said that.
Right.
So it's like, now it's like, oh, this is like for the real deal, actual, like, full thing now.
It's wild. I really just want to hear if your students do find new ways to annoy you digitally.
A couple have. Yeah. No, I mean, I said less. I didn't say it was 0.
Someday we're going to have you tell a positive experience story about teaching, because I am sure the picture people have just from listening to this podcast is that you are gruff. Like, you are like Ron Swanson in school, just, like, trying to, like, whittle your wooden recorder, and people just annoying the shit out of you.
You know, it's like, teaching is great. I love the job. But it's not the movie scenario of you, like, coming in, and it's like all these kids that hate you, and then you have this one lesson that transforms everything, and everyone's like, no, Mr. Chapman, that's just not reality, right? Like, that doesn't happen. Like, you'll have that kind of relationship with some of your students, but generally speaking, it's not the, like, you change the world.
So no one has stood on their desks and said, oh, Captain, my Captain to you?
Exactly, yeah. The Dead Poets Society, I already didn't love that movie that much, but I'm sure if I watched it now, I would fucking hate it.
You would just throw your remote at the screen.
Like, this is bullshit. It doesn't work like this.
It's like when a doctor watches Grey's Anatomy.
Exactly, yeah.
All right. So you want to do a little bit of news?
Yeah, what's happening in the news?
Well, this week, or this year, is the 10th anniversary of a little video game called Nier.
Yes, the original Nier.
Which, not very well known, but it did lead to, kind of a cult hit, did lead to the eventual sequel, Nier Automata, which is your favorite game of all time.
Yes, it is.
And many people's. It's obviously a big hit. And for that 10th anniversary, they're doing a couple of fun things. The funnest of which is there will be a remake of that original Nier for the PS4, Xbox One, and PC. They put out a 1-minute reveal trailer. It's very Nier-esque. And it is called, the remake is called Nier Replicant version 1.22474487139.
They patched Nier a lot. So it's just a very detailed version number. Yeah, it's a very Yoko Taro thing. Like, one thing that's interesting about this, so, like, thinking about the title, so it's Nier Replicant. That's a more important detail than I think people who don't know anything about this game would think, because there are actually 2 different versions of the original Nier.
Of course there are.
There's Nier Replicant, and there's Nier Gestalt. Nier Replicant was the version that came out in Japan and I think a couple of other territories, where the main character, Nier, is the older brother of some, like, little sister character that he has to protect. And it's, like, a big part of the story. And so that's, like, a younger, sort of Bishonen-looking Nier character. Which is, if, I'm describing him as, like, this young Bishonen-type character, and American listeners are like, I'd maybe never played Nier, but I saw footage of Nier. That's not what Nier looks like. You saw Nier Gestalt, which was the version that came out in North America, where the main character, Nier, was redesigned and aged up to be the little sister character's father instead, and he's, like, big buff guy Nier. And the idea specifically was that character redesign would appeal more to North American audiences, because we're not into Bishonen stuff. We're into big, meaty muscle heads, which I'm not really going to disagree with that assessment.
Well, especially that would have been like the trenches of the Gears of War days.
Oh, yes, yeah, because because it would have been in 2010.
Yeah.
So it's, lots of Gears of War, lots of Unreal Engine 3 games with big, beefy dudes like Arkham Asylum and stuff like that. So we are getting the original version that came out in Japan, which I guess is what you would call, like, the quote-unquote original version. And so we're getting the Replicant version, which I think is the first time that version has ever come out in North America, which is interesting. Like, I kind of wish, since it's a remaster, that they would just give you both versions. I'm sure that's, like, a lot of work, but it would be cool to have both the replicas, because it's not just the character model. Obviously, there's like dialogue changes and things like that go along with it as well.
We know very little about it, so there's not even I originally wrote this down as like for 2020. There's no for 2020. This is just this is coming. So maybe it'll be DLC later on. That could be kind of interesting. Gestalt mode. You could activate that from the main menu and then play a new game from that.
Dad mode.
That'd be great. But yeah, I mean, Yoko Taro is working on it. So that's fun because you haven't played this, right?
No, yeah. I mean, it's by the time I was interested in Nier, the idea of like playing that game on like a 360 was silly.
Yeah, but I'm definitely excited it's coming out because that'll be, at the very least, we'll get another Nier podcast out of it.
Yeah, I'm very curious. Like I'm curious to see whether or not the narrative elements of that game are going to overcome what I understand are like pretty huge gameplay deficits.
Yeah.
Like I'm very fascinated by the idea of playing that game.
Well, and who knows how they're going to polish it, and if it's a remake, or if it's more of a remaster, or we'll see.
Yeah, because we only have that like 1 minute teaser. Thing to look at,
which I would recommend. It is very, if you've just been needing like 1 minute of a Nier fix of like the kind of Yoko Taro dialogue coming over the screen, I was like, that's very nice. They also announced a mobile game called Nier Reincarnation. Also got a little trailer. Very few details on this as well. Also very much like in the Nier style, but we don't know what kind of mobile game it's going to be.
I hope it's a gacha game, but all you get are like 2Bs and 9Ss. It's just like here's the 7,000th different 2B. That's like, it's the same character model, just like slightly different character portrait or something.
I think it would be, in fitting with the end of Nier Automata, the video game, it should be like a redistribution of wealth game where like if you get hooked on it and you start like giving lots of money to it, it like gives it to different other players or different share. I don't know how it does it, but it just takes money and puts it elsewhere.
It's a game that is zero profit.
Yeah.
It's just redistributes the money where it needs to go.
And also, Xbox announced today, in tandem with all this, that Nier Automata, specifically the Game of the Yorha edition, which has all the DLC and stuff, that's coming to Xbox Game Pass this Friday, April 3rd. So if you haven't played it and you have an Xbox, you now officially have no excuse, because there it is. And hell, I am stuck in Colorado here at home with the Xbox as my only home console. Well, I have my Switch too, which is a hybrid, I guess. And maybe I want to play Nier Automata again, and there it'll be. And I've never played the DLC. So, which you told a whole story about.
Yeah, like, I'm not going to tell you the DLC is good. I was very entertained by it, though.
And definitely...
At the very least, the music video they play at the end of the DLC is fucking amazing. If you don't want to go through all, like, the combat trial stuff, that fucking music video is... I still have nightmares about it.
But, Sean, I swear to God, last month they added Yakuza 0. This month they're adding Nier Automata. They are trying to get you to endorse Xbox Game Pass.
Yeah. But they're all games I've already played, so...
I know. No, I mean endorse to other people. Yeah.
I mean, hey, you should play Yakuza 0, you should play Nier Automata.
Yeah.
Like, hey,
however you can get them. Yeah. But, yes, anyway, I just think it's funny that it's like one game from Sean's top 10.
Yeah, it's a Sean's Cabin Improved Game Pass list.
Yes. Anywho, so that's really the only news. I mean... All other entertainment news is pretty much shut down right now, obviously. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, because they did have that Nintendo Direct, mini Direct thing, which I didn't watch any of that. So
I guess I should just
come out of that.
Nothing huge. It was mostly some stuff like follow-ups on things we already knew. So like Xenoblade Chronicles Remastered is coming May 29th. But we already knew that was coming. We just didn't know when. So, and they confirmed it's going to have a new playable epilogue. So for Xenoblade fans, that'll be there. I might have to. It coming to Switch might make me finally play the original Xenoblade Chronicles because it's been recommended to me several times. Most compellingly, one of our listeners informed me that because Xenoblade has that weird old British dub, Clara from Doctor Who is one of the main characters in it.
I did know that at one point.
Yeah, so that kind of like that makes me want to play it a little bit. But anyway, so that's coming at the end of May. They had a lot of ports announced. So the BioShock collection, BioShock 2, BioShock Infinite, all coming. Borderlands, the Handsome collection, I think it is. All the... Yeah,
which is like 1, 2, and the pre-sequel.
Yes. Yeah. So everything but Borderlands 3. There was one other package. Let's see, what else? They announced... This one I am excited for, and I actually have pre-ordered, is Catherine, the Atlas game.
Yeah.
The Catherine full-body remake version that came out for PS4 last year is coming to Switch this June. And if you pre-order, you get a sheep keychain, which I like. Nice. So there's that. What else did they announce? Oh, they announced a couple more Star Wars games coming. So Star Wars Jedi Knight Jedi Academy is out now on Switch.
Yes, yeah.
Which one is that?
And like PS4 and stuff. So that's the sequel to Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast.
Okay.
So that's the one where you create your own character who is like a Padawan to Kyle Katarn, who was the main character of the previous games.
Okay.
So it is the latest Jedi Knight game, which came out in like 2005.
And so what was the first Jedi Knight called?
Dark Forces. So it's Star Wars Dark Forces, Star Wars Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight, Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast, Star Wars Jedi Knight Jedi Academy.
Which ones are on consoles now?
Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast and Jedi Academy are on consoles. The Dark Forces games are not.
Okay. But they also announced that Star Wars Episode 1 Pod Racer, the racer game from the N64, is coming to Switch, and I'm sure PS4 as well. I am excited for that. That is a game I definitely rented for the N64 back in the day. I don't think I ever owned it, but it's like Star Wars Mario Kart kind of, but with pod racing. If assuming that's the same price point, which is like less than $10, I will 100% buy that, and I hope they have online play because
I'm sure that game holds up really well.
It probably doesn't, but that's going to be fun. Anyway, that was a surprise announcement. So yeah, it was a lot of little things. I think it was a lot of things that will appeal to different sects of the Switch audience, but no one major thing that everyone would be excited about, which is why they called it a mini direct and not a...
Yeah. So that makes sense, because I just feel like that happened, and I was like, oh, cool. And then I just didn't see any announcements from it. I was like, okay.
I would imagine if you own a Switch and you drill down on the list, you will find something to be excited for. I don't feel the need to buy BioShock on the Switch. First-person shooters don't really play well on the Switch. They don't play well portably, and if they don't play well portably, there's no reason to own it on Switch. But I'm sure there's someone who would love to play BioShock on Switch. Sure. There you go. And it's cool it's happening. I mean, God, BioShock Infinite was like such a technical marvel back in the day. It's just crazy to think that can be on Switch now.
Yeah, it makes me remember the oft promise to never deliver BioShock on the PS Vita.
Oh God,
that game to the Vita, and it just never happened.
That was a thing.
Yep.
All right, so that's the Nintendo news. That's the Nier news. Do you want to move on to talk about some video games?
Let's talk about some video games, Jonathan.
All right, let's start with the kind of spoiler-free portion. I want to talk about one extra game I've been playing beyond Animal Crossing and Doom.
Okay.
Which is when I finished Doom, and I was playing Animal Crossing, I realized Animal Crossing is never like the one game you play, right? Because a little bit you come in every day, but you're not going to like sit down for the evening and play Animal Crossing.
Right.
I guess you could, but it would be a little boring night after night to do it that way. So I had last week, Xbox had a big sale on the Resident Evil series. So I grabbed a couple of those. I actually put out the call on Twitter because I'm like, what is the first one? Is it Resident Evil or Resident Evil 0 or what? Like, because I was confused.
Because it's Resident Evil, then they did the remake of Resident Evil. Around the time they did that, they made Resident Evil 0, which is the prequel.
Yes, and those are now out in HD on consoles. So basically on most consoles you can get all the numbered Resident Evil games and a lot of the non-numbered ones too. So anyway, I wound up buying, and this cost me like $30 total, Resident Evil Remake 1, Resident Evil 2, the one from last year, and then Resident Evil 4. And
have you never played Resident Evil 4?
I've never finished it.
Okay.
I've definitely played around in it. I know the whole like Eastern European setting. I remember you get to like a bridge and shit.
It's Resident Evil 4. Don't know if you've heard this. It's a very good video game.
I'm excited to get to it. So I started, before Doom came out, I did boot up Resident Evil 1, and that remake is still, so that is the GameCube remake of the original that has just been put out in HD, basically. Mm-hmm. And so it is still the old style, fixed camera angles and tank controls. Mm-hmm. I could not play that game.
Although I think in the HD version, I think you can toggle on like modern control styles. Like I probably still wouldn't, because that game is designed to be played with tank controls, but because of the fixed camera angle, I think it just works better that way. Because I played Resident Evil Remake fucking forever ago, because I played that on the GameCube. So like much after it came out. Because I kind of like went back and checked it out at some point.
Yeah, I probably played an hour of it, and I had a really hard time getting into it. It might just be like, because I've never played a game like that with the fixed camera angles, it might just be too old for me. I don't want to dismiss it. Maybe I'll go back to it at some point.
Because I will say it is really fucking good. Okay. I think you should give it another shot.
Okay.
Like kind of knowing better what it is. Because if you only played an hour, I don't think you got into, because that means you never ran into any like the Crimson Head zombies, and like that game does some fucked up shit.
Okay.
That's great.
And maybe after playing some of the later ones and knowing like how the puzzles and navigation work, I'll be better equipped for it. Because I wound up this week, I just jumped into 2 because the 3 remake is coming out next week.
Right.
So I'll probably play that. and Resident Evil 2, like, you don't need to know anything from Resident Evil 1 for it.
The zombies happened. You're in Raccoon City.
Well, especially because Resident Evil 2 is a separate set of characters, like, a few months later, and Claire Redfield is Chris's brother, but basically all you need to know is, like, Chris went into the mansion, and weird shit happened.
Yes.
And now Claire's looking for him.
And there's a dude named Wesker.
Yes.
I think he's in 2. I don't remember. I haven't played the remake of Resident Evil 2.
Yeah. The remake of Resident Evil 2 is fucking incredible.
Yeah, I own it. I've just never gotten around to playing it. I intended to play it last October, and then every other video game came out. It's like, well, shit.
So I've played about 4 hours of it now, so I'm about halfway through, like, the first... It's 2 campaigns, like most of these games. It's Claire and it's Leon, and I started with the Claire route, and I'm, like, 4 hours into that, so I'm probably about halfway through it, and then I'll have to do the Leon one after that. But... good God, it is phenomenal, Sean. Because, again, I have never, like, super played... The one I've played the most by far is Resident Evil 4, because I think I had that one on the Wii, and I know I played a good amount when they did the Wii version, which is basically the PS2 version, but with motion controls, kind of like Metroid Prime. And it was very good, but Resident Evil 4 also is a fairly different, Because that one doesn't even... Does that one have zombies, or is it more like...
They're not called zombies. They're like the Las Plagas, but they're basically zombies. But then, like, as with any Resident Evil game, it starts out with, like, zombies, and then by the end, it's like weird tentacle, like, centipede monsters and shit like that.
Yeah. So anyway, but Resident Evil 4 is a little different in setting and everything, because like Resident Evil 4, you're outside, right?
Because Resident Evil 4 is also like way more actiony. Like it doesn't like it has like a survival horror tone to it, but it doesn't have like anything that's actually that scary in it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the game that, like, halfway through you, like, fight this weird little, like, Napoleon, like, immortal Napoleon dude who has, like, a castle with, like, a giant statue and boulders that try to run you over and shit. Like,
well, that sounds great.
It's great. It gets very wacky in a way that I love. That game's awesome.
Well, Resident Evil 2 also gets very wacky, and Resident Evil 2 is utterly fucking terrifying. I don't know if the, like, original PS1 version would be if you went back and played it, but this remake, which is a proper remake, like, we throw the word remake around a lot. Usually we mean remaster or port.
Yeah.
This is a full-on, obviously, from-the-ground-up remake.
Yeah, like, it's a third-person style game. Like, it's not fixed camera angles, none of that.
No.
Yeah, it's a totally modern game.
Yeah,
style.
but with, like, very 90s design element, like, good 90s design elements we don't get as much anymore. And it's, like, it's so good. I guess because Resident Evil is such a big, sprawling series, I never really had a sense of what exactly it was. Mm-hmm. And so it's been really fun to drill down and, like, oh, this is kind of, it's survival horror. It's got a little Metroidvania in it because it's this big, in this one you're in the police station and, like, there's locked doors and you come back and you find the keys and all this stuff.
You have to get, like, weird, like, here's, like, the scorpion key and shit like that.
In Resident Evil 2, it's all the, like, cards. It's like, here's the heart, here's the diamond, here's the spade. It's, you solve puzzles, you'll find a note about, like, a combination and you'll go do the combination as safe. It's so good, Sean. Like, I don't remember the last time I just, like, sat down with a fresh game and was, like planning to, like, check it out and then played 2 hours, and then another 2 later at night. And I really need to, like, take a picture of the space I'm playing games in right now and share it because it's the perfect space to be fucking spooked out by this game because basically I was not planning on being in Colorado as long as I was.
Yeah.
I have a little makeshift space in our unfinished basement amid a bunch of boxes where I've shoved, like, an old couch and a TV on top of a filing cabinet.
Nice.
And the only light is, like, which I keep off if I'm playing a very dark game like Resident Evil, is, like, one of those ones where you, like, have to pull a string. And so it's very good for Resident Evil.
Yeah, you're, like, basically if... we all just sort of, like, somehow, like, die, like weird immediate deaths from coronavirus goes bad. And then, like, 2,000 years in the future, there's, like, post-apocalyptic humans are exploring the environment. You're already set up for, like, that fallout. Like, there's a skeleton sitting here in the couch with, like, a note scrawled next to you that's, like, June 1st, 2020. It's happening again. Like, I'm here playing Resident Evil 2.
And Resident Evil 2 is objectively a weird game to be playing right now because it is about, but it's cathartic because, with the coronavirus, you don't get to just go out and shoot shit in a cool leather jacket, which you do in Resident Evil 2. But it's Sean, it is such a good game. I can't recommend it highly enough. I can't wait to get back and play it. I am totally hooked. And about 2 hours into the game, you meet the tyrant of this game, Mr. X.
Yeah,
and
Mr.
he is
X.
the scariest motherfucker It's this moment. The game's been out for a year. I feel like I could spoil this. The game's
been out for a year, and it is a remake of a game from the 90s that had Mr. X in it. Like, I know they expanded the Mr. X stuff, but he's in that old game.
But where you meet Mr. X in this one is there's this whole part where you're going around. The one thing Resident Evil 2 is like uncannily good at is getting you to do what the game wants you to do without realizing you're being guided. Mm-hmm. I don't know how else to describe it, but there's a lot of stuff where I feel like I'm exploring and going off the beaten path, and I'm not sure if I'm going the right way, and then a major event will happen in such a way that I'm like, they totally wanted me to go here, and I can't even tell you how I was guided there. That's like masterful game design, you know? But there's this one part where you kind of get out on the roof, and there had been this helicopter crash, and there's this helicopter that's in the middle of this hallway, and you can't get through the hallway because the helicopter's like fallen through it and it's on fire. And you do this little puzzle and you get water to fall on the helicopter. Now the helicopter's not on fire, so you can go through it. And when you go back through and it's not on fire anymore, Mr. X comes around the hall for the first time, and he's this giant, dude with like blue skin and a hat. And immediately I just instinctively like fire, and I shoot his hat off, and I get an achievement that says Mr. Hat because I shot his hat off. And I'm like, and that's how I met this dude. And then for the rest of the fucking game, you kind of have to play this game with headphones because it's very terrifying because you can just hear his heavy footsteps around you, and like, okay, he's coming from that way. I got to go through this door because I'm going to meet Mr. X. Fuck, that game is scary. It is so good. I'm playing the Claire route, like I said. I really like the characters and everything. I know some people were disappointed because they had to recast the roles because this game came out during the actors' strike. Yeah. But I have no pre-existing association with these characters, and I feel like the voice acting is very good. I know it's probably not what some fans were used to because it's different voices, but it's very good for my ears. It's a beautiful game. It's like just graphically gorgeous. Gorgeous is probably the wrong word. It's a gnarly-ass game, but it's like just very graphically. It's a
very gorgeous, like, dilapidated police station with like mutilated corpses in it.
Oh yeah, and like it is gory as hell. Like one of the first things that happens is you get into the police station and you're trying to help this officer who's trying to crawl in under, one of the like gates, and you're pulling on him, and then someone starts eating him, and you pull in just the lower half of his body with the entrails spewing out.
Nice.
God, this game it's so good, Sean. And I'll finish this, and then Resident Evil 3 comes out on Friday. I think I'll probably pick that up. And then I'll probably play 4 after that, and then maybe I'll loop back around to 1 at some point.
Yes.
Probably not play 5 and 6.
Yeah, like 5 is okay. I played Resident Evil 5 co-op, and I think that's probably the best way to play that game. Because I think playing that game solo probably not great. Yeah. And then 6, I have only ever heard bad things about. I want to play 7 at some point.
I do too. I
own it. Like, I own Resident Evil 7. I own Resident Evil 2 Remake. The problem is that, like, I want to play those games at the right time.
Yeah.
But the right time to play a horror game is also the time when every other fucking video game comes out. So it's like in October is when I'm like, yeah, I'm in the mood to play Resident Evil 2 Remake. And then, some massive game comes out. It's like, oh, shit.
Just at some point make time because it is really that good. And it would have 100% been on my top 10 in the last year if I had played it. So great fucking game.
Yeah. People should also look up videos, if you've not seen them yet, of the PC version that someone modded in. They made a PC mod that has positional audio on Mr. X that is just X going to give it to you playing. So it's like, so instead of it just being his footsteps, you just hear X going to give it to you, and it's just like somewhere in the environment. It's really fucking funny.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So if you have the PC version of that game, that's probably not a first playthrough thing, but absolutely on a second playthrough, go find the X going to give it to you mod because it's so fucking funny.
I mean, God, last night I'm trying to solve this puzzle with like gears and a clock tower, and I hear him coming around, and then I'll just like crouch and stay quiet, and I'll hear hut, hut, and then they back up a little bit, and it's just like, now I'm imagining that with X gonna give it to you.
Yeah.
Okay. I've also been playing a shit ton of Animal Crossing, New Horizons. It's so good, Sean, and it's hard to review Animal Crossing for obvious reasons. There were a lot of critics I noticed who had to get very creative, and that was good. But like, I've played for over a week now, and it's great. I think it's probably the best Animal Crossing, at least in the early going, in terms of everything there is to do. Like, Animal Crossing is a weird Nintendo franchise because you can't really reinvent it and have it still be Animal Crossing. I don't think you can do Breath of the Wild Animal Crossing, right?
Yeah.
Because if you did something crazy, like completely change the fishing system where like it shows your lure underwater and it's like Sega Bass Fishing or something, that wouldn't fit, right? So they kind of, all the tweaking they can do is kind of around the edges, But all that tweaking they've done makes this Animal Crossing feel significantly more playable to me than any of the others. It's not just little things like they've added a nice little tool wheel and they've given you a little more inventory space and stuff. And like you don't, like in your home, you just have storage. You don't have to like buy a chest to store stuff in. And then when that runs out, buy another chest and then have a whole room of chests downstairs, which is what you would have to do like in the GameCube version to keep extra shit. So there's little things like that. But I also just feel like... the way, like, the amount of money they give you for sort of fruit and fish and the shells and the different things you get on the island is a little higher, and there's more of an incentive to sort of do those basic activities and engage with them every day. The crafting system can be a little annoying when your weapons break and stuff, but it also just means there's sort of more of a loop going on in the game that feels a lot more satisfying. They've added stuff where you can go visit other islands that are, like, coded into the game that... separate than like multiplayer stuff. So you buy what's called a Nook Miles ticket, and then you get to go visit some secret island somewhere and get more materials if you want to find that. And sometimes you'll get a rare drop where you'll find new fruit there and things like that. On those islands is also where you will meet other characters who are out on that island, and then you can invite them to come back to your island, and that's how you recruit new residents now. When you get a new resident, Tom Nook asks you to like literally build their house and build the furniture for it, and so you get to put a little bit of a stamp on how that's all going to go. It's just, there's a lot of it very much feels like kind of on the path from what New Leaf was doing 7 years ago with the mayor stuff, but just pushing it enough that like I would sometimes get frustrated with Animal Crossing where sometimes it would feel like there was so little I could do every day that I would kind of fall off the loop that way because you have to check in every day, but maybe only for 20 minutes and then you're done. Now it feels like I could do a 20-minute check-in on some days, but on some days, if I really do want to kind of veg out and play Animal Crossing for 2 hours, there's plenty to do. You're not going to like run out. And like there's the whole Nook Miles system, which is almost like an in-game achievement system that gives you a currency that you can spend on stuff. It's just all of it is so polished. It feels like I'm way more addicted to this one in the first week than I have been probably since the GameCube. Because the GameCube one I played heavily for years as a kid. But then I never really got into the DS one. I was into the Wii one for a month or two and then fell off. The 3DS one, kind of the same thing. Who knows? We're not a month or two in. But I can totally imagine myself coming back to this one pretty regularly. And there's a lot of stuff I'm still excited to get to. Like, I haven't even gotten Isabelle on my island yet and Resident Services, which my brother tells me is when the game kind of fully opens up. And it already feels like there's plenty of fun stuff for me to do. So it's great. It's very relaxing. It's a great game to like kick back and watch TV and play Animal Crossing at the same time or something else. It's a great podcast game, obviously. If you need to listen to a podcast like this fine podcast and go around catching fish and shit, it's awesome. The museum is such a cool museum. I have had, when you go in, like, it really is like one of the, it's like if they built this in the real world, it would be like the coolest museum in the world. And I have thought, Sean, several times when I've gone and explored the museum, I've gone, oh, this is great. I should totally go to the museum tomorrow. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Museums are closed. So at least I have the museum in Animal Crossing, and Blather's making silly puns. But yeah, it's a really fun game. There's a lot of quirky shit in it. I love that, like, the thing everyone wants to farm now to get a lot of bells is tarantulas that show up.
I've seen a lot of that on Twitter, and I'm like, why are all these people catching all these fucking tarantulas? What is going on in this weird game?
It's so weird, because so tarantulas show up at night as kind of a rare insect, and you can catch...
Not an insect. It's an arachnid.
Right, as a rare... Yeah, in the I just mean, like, in the category they show them in on Animal Crossing. If you're correct, they are an arachnid.
Thank you.
And you
Let's
can
be scientifically accurate on this podcast,
yes.
please.
You catch the arachnid, known as the tarantula, and it gets you 8,000 bells. So that's a lot if you get multiple tarantulas. And there's an island that is a really rare island spawn that if you go at night is just full of tarantulas. And so you can like farm them and get like 200,000 bells in one go. But the other funny part is if the tarantula hits you before you hit it, it'll like knock you out and poison you and you wake up in your house.
I feel like they are doing a disservice to tarantulas. Tarantulas don't just go around attacking people and knocking them out.
Maybe it's your character gets scared and faints.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Fair enough. They are scared.
Because now that Animal Crossing is in HD, the tarantula's like fully like furry and like kind of...
Yeah, because I feel like the way I got exposed to this is I saw people talking about tarantulas in Animal Crossing on Twitter, and I was just like, that's weird. But in my head, it was like a cartoonish tarantula, and then I actually saw like a clip that someone posted of someone doing on that tarantula island. I'm like, that's just a fucking tarantula. Like that's
it's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, it's like here's this like ridiculous cartoony animal boy, and then here's just like an actual like hairy fucking tarantula spider just there, and it's like you can see all the bristles on its legs and shit. You're like, this is fucked up. This is weird. This feels incongruous with the rest of the art style of this game.
It kind of does. It definitely does. They're also just like very big on the map when you're going around. It's wild. Yeah, I also really love room decorating in this one for whatever reason. I don't know if it's the specific kind of items they give you, if it's much easier to decorate now because you can go into decorating mode and you don't have to physically track every item around the house.
Oh god.
Which is much better. But like I love my house as I've made it. It's like super awesome. Tom Nook just added for a cool 350,000 bells a back room to my house, and I've made that like the toilet room because I kept getting different toilet things. I had a toilet, I had a bidet, I had a really nice bathtub, I had hand towels, I had a plunger, and so
does your character actually have to use the toilet?
I don't think so, but I did see someone tweet about there is some kind of animation. I don't know how it activates though. I don't know if you have to like eat something and then go sit on the toilet.
I was going to say, it's like, has Animal Crossing caught up to Dragon Quest Builders in like you like can use poop as a resource?
They really should add that in a Nintendo does DLC a lot now, and I think that should be the year 2 DLC is the poop DLC.
Yeah, and that's just what they call it. Here's the poop DLC.
Yes.
And it's just you can poop now, and you can use the poop as fertilizer, and that's it. $500, please.
Oh man, but it's great. I'm very proud of my weird toilet room. And it's a very good game. It's fun. It's Animal Crossing, and the weird thing is now, as people point out, especially because that Nintendo Direct didn't have anything on first-party Nintendo games, we don't know what or when the next first-party Nintendo game is.
Yeah, which is one of the reasons why I was really surprised when that Nintendo Direct happened, because it's like, I thought there was going to be like, and here's the release date for Bayonetta 3 or like something.
Yeah.
And it is like, here's a bunch of ports of stuff. I'm like, what are they doing for the rest of the year?
I mean, obviously they've got to have. We know they have stuff.
Yes,
it's Nintendo. But like, I wonder if it's partially a like COVID thing, and like maybe work has slowed in Japan, and so they're just kind of like, let's wait and see how this plays out. But I don't know. It's weird. And we know there's like the Pokemon DLC coming. And I think we all think that Breath of the Wild 2 is a candidate for the holiday spot.
Yeah, assuming that it's reusing a lot of stuff from that first game, it makes sense.
Yeah, but who knows? So we will find out, assumedly at some point. I mean, everyone's in a weird holding pattern. As like Sony, we have a weird amount of information from the PS5. Nintendo, we don't know when the next game is. It's a weird time, but at least Animal Crossing will keep you busy for a while. Sean, let's talk about the big motherfucker this week. Yeah. Which is Doom Eternal, the sequel to 2016 Doom, which we both loved.
This game is the BFG right now. It's the big fucking game.
Yes. Doom 2016 was in both of our top 5s that year.
Yes. I think, was it my number 2?
It might have been. It was my number 4, I think.
Yeah, it was up there, because 2016 was a good year.
It was a very good year, yeah.
That was the year of Hitman. I remember that Hitman was my game of the year that year.
That was the year Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth was my game of the year.
True, yes.
Which, hey, if you need a recommendation for coronavirus lockdown, Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth is now on Switch and PC in addition to PS4.
And Vita. If you don't have a Switch but you want some portable game, you shouldn't be portably gaming because you should be home.
Yeah.
But if you are, you can get that Vita version also.
Yes. But don't go out and buy a Vita, because a used game store is probably a really unsafe place to be right now.
No, that's a filthy, filthy Vita. That you might not get coronavirus, but you're going to get something from that used Vita.
Yeah, don't go buy a herpes Vita. But yes, Doom Eternal, not on PlayStation Vita.
No, unfortunately.
But it is on Xbox, PS4, and PC.
Yeah.
And we played it. So, Sean, I guess, we gave some first impressions last week. We were very positive on the early levels. Now we have both played the campaign in full.
Yeah.
I 100%ed the campaign. Did you?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So I played through the whole campaign on Ultraviolence, got all the collectibles and nonsense, did all that. I did a couple of extra things, because there's some in-game challenges. They call them milestones that you can do. And with most of those, you can do with cheats on. And that game is very fun to play with infinite ammo, because you just melt shit.
I did a level on infinite ammo because I had missed one collectible, so I went back in and I'm like, oh right, I can just use cheats. And I just used the sword the whole time. And it was great.
Yeah, and then now I'm about halfway through a playthrough on Nightmare, which probably tells you how much I'm enjoying playing the game.
Yes, so my sense is, I want to be clear, I like this game, I recommend it, 2 thumbs up. but I think you might like it a little more than me. Mm-hmm. So why don't you start? Because I've done a Twitter kind of thread trying to like work my thoughts out. Because I have kind of complicated thoughts on parts of this game. Again, I want to stress overall that's not a dislike of the game.
Yeah, which I think is pretty common. Like I think I don't like divisive is probably too strong of a word, but I do feel like this game people ultimately kind of skew one of two ways on it. Broadly speaking, of like either loving it or being like a that was good, but kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it feels like you're probably in the that was good, but, and I think I'm more in the loving it. But there was like a period in the middle stretch of that game where I think I was a little bit more in that it's good but territory. But there's something that like I finished it on Ultraviolence and I was like, and I was still kind of in a little bit in that headspace of like I really love this game, but there's a couple of like stuff about it I think could be better. And then I went and I played one of the master levels. So you have, if you pre-order the game, you have 2 master levels you can do. If you haven't pre-ordered it, you only have 1, and they're going to like roll out more of these, which are basically remixed versions of levels in the game that are more difficult. And I played both of those on Ultraviolence. I'm like, this game is so much fucking fun when it is like pushing you against the wall and like being very difficult. Like I think the most fun things in the game are the 6 Slayer gates. Is the best stuff in the whole game. And that was like, okay, I'm going to start playing this game again on Nightmare. And then I played through the first like 4 levels in a row on Nightmare. And so it was just like, yeah, no, I think there are things about this game that could be better. I think like in particular stuff like the storytelling is way worse than Doom 2016's. I mean, it's not a game you play that much for the story, so it's not a huge impact on me, but it's like the storytelling isn't a plus for me in the way it was in Doom 2016. It's just a thing that's like, this is fine. I like some of the lore. I appreciate the way they like tie in like ridiculous ways this like era of Doom with the old era of Doom, and that they basically confirm that this is the same Doom guy that was on Mars in Doom 1 fighting bullshit there, and eventually he got like time travel, ultimate dimension, whatever the fuck happened, and he ended up in this situation. So some of that stuff is fun with the storytelling, but it never quite hits that sweet note in terms of pacing and like the light satire that Doom 2016 had. None of that really is present in Doom Eternal's story. I think like each level is really satisfying, and there's a nice sense of like every single level is so distinct and unique. But in gaining that, they lose something in the sort of like the simple, straightforward pacing of Doom 2016.
Doom 2016 is extremely propulsive.
Yes.
In a way Doom Eternal is not, I think.
Yeah, Doom Eternal is a game that I like to play a level and then put it down for a little bit and pick it up again a little bit later. Although now I say that, but then when I started playing it on Nightmare, I just kind of went through a lot. Although the part of that was also... Even though
you're probably not getting all the collectibles and stuff, right?
I am getting the collectibles, but like I can just get them very quickly because I know where everything is. So it's like I'm playing through those levels much faster, even though it's like a little bit harder. And I'm dying a little. I'm probably actually not dying more than I did when I was playing on Ultraviolence because I know all the weapons and stuff now. But yeah, so it's like it has some issues, but it's like such a fascinating game to put up to Doom 2016 because it reminds me a little bit of like the difference between Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, in that like Doom 2016 is this game that is very streamlined, very focused, and it has, as you said, this like propulsive feeling to it that it's so tight of a game, and in all those ways, like I really love that game. And Doom Eternal loses all those elements by going for this much more kind of like maximalist design philosophy, which is more different environments, more like different enemy types, all that kind of stuff, and like really kind of jamming as much as they can into the game. And like that includes stuff like the cheat codes and the level select and the fast travel. Like it is such a fully completed game that's just like jam packed with all this stuff. And so it loses some of that streamlined nature of Doom 2016, but it gains in what I think is probably like the best playing first-person shooter I've ever played. In terms of the raw combat, I think like just the raw, like the pure game feel of Doom Eternal and the like encounter design and things like that and the sound effects, like everything that contributes to the feeling of you like popping a sticky grenade from the shotgun on an imp's head, like that is the best any game has been at that kind of thing, I think maybe ever. Like it is so utterly superlative in that regard that like a lot of that other stuff that's like, the story could be better, like the pacing here and there could definitely be better, especially on a second playthrough. I think a lot of that stuff just sort of fades away and it becomes this very kind of like pure game playing experience of I am just completely in the zone, 100% focused on what I'm doing, and what I'm doing is splitting demon heads open and just going buck fucking wild, and it's a great time. It's so much fun.
And this is where it gets weird, because I don't disagree with anything you're saying.
Yeah.
I think I agree with all of that, and I do think, like, on a basic level, like with the number of weapons you have and how fully and variably useful they all are, and the scenarios they put you in where they really force you to use all of the tools at your disposal, and then everything you're talking about, just how playable it is, I think I agree. I think, like, my Hall of Fame is like Destiny, Halo, like the Bungie ones, basically.
Yes, yeah.
And I think you and I have said multiple times Destiny has been probably the best playing first-person shooter.
Yeah.
And I think Doom Eternal gives it a run for its money. It's so different, it's a little hard to,
they're totally different styles of first-person shooter, but, like, I would say in terms of just, like, raw combat, I would give that to Doom Eternal.
Yeah, I would,
it's
too.
More of the game's focus.
And I think it's also, like, a challenge thing of, like, when... like, so we both have an affection, I think, for, like, Halo Legendary Mode.
Yes.
But Halo Legendary Mode always feels like it's a bit of a prank in some ways, of like it's the game you are weakened to a point of ridiculousness in that.
And it's like the way that Legendary works in Halo is you are effectively playing a different game than someone who's playing it on any other difficulty. Like the way that, like, you have to use plasma pistols and stuff like that. Like, you have to be so deliberate in Legendary in a way that just doesn't manifest at all in any other difficulty. It's a different game experience.
Exactly. And Doom Eternal is more like, I don't want to. I hate breaking out this comparison too much, but it is almost like kind of a little From Software, like the challenge is more of the point here, and it's baked into the whole thing in a way that you're meant to, like, die a lot and learn and try again, and in ways that I don't think first person shooters usually don't integrate challenge as well as I think Doom Eternal does, if that makes sense.
I agree. Yeah.
So, and actually this is also part of, but this is where I start to, like, my mind is just split a little bit on this game, because I wound up playing through most of it on Hurt Me Plenty difficulty. I started on Ultraviolence. I've played Doom 2016 all the way through on Ultraviolence. I don't think I ever beat it on Nightmare, but I played some of it on Nightmare, because I think there were achievements built. You had to play some of it on
I think
Nightmare.
there's, like, one level you had to beat on Nightmare. Yeah.
And so, I've played Doom 2016 on hard difficulty, and I don't know if it wasn't necessarily that this one was too hard for me, but it was that the amount, that the size of the challenge mixed with the size of the levels, because some of these levels are very long and very big, mixed with the sheer number of collectibles and the challenges you have to do in level, of, like, if I was going through the way I wanted to play this and, like, 100%ing it and doing all the exploration, I got too fatigued playing it hard to do all that other stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think I would probably benefit, like, my love of this game if I went in and did an Ultraviolence or Nightmare run and told myself, you don't have to get everything. Like, certainly you don't have to do the 3 challenges in every level, because you've done that. You've gotten the achievements. You'll be fine.
I mean, usually, like, honestly, compared to, because Doom 2016 has that exact same stuff in it.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, in Doom Eternal, 2 out of the 3 challenges you're almost guaranteed to get.
Exactly.
No matter what. Compared to, like, Doom 2016, I actually much prefer the challenges in Eternal, because I think 2016 forced you too often to like, really, like, change the whole way you're playing the level in order to get those challenges. And it's a lot of, like, okay, I'm just going to be in this room, and I'm just going to, like, kill these things, then load the checkpoint and just get this challenge over with, right at the beginning of the level, so I don't have to think about it. Doom Eternal doesn't have that problem.
No, you're right, and I agree on that. But it's a number of things they kind of put in your headspace that take, like, brain power that made it kind of tough for me to just focus on the challenge in front of me, and that's why I wound up playing it on. It doesn't become an easy game on Hurt Me Plenty. I don't think you can make Doom Eternal an easy game. There are some really hard things in this game.
Yeah, the game is, and that's, like, where it's different from something like Halo, that if you're playing it on Nightmare, it is not a fundamentally different experience than any of the other difficulties. Other than maybe, I haven't touched it on the easiest one, so I don't know how easy it gets, but presumably I think even there, it is fundamentally the same gameplay experience, just with the dials tweaked. It's not that the dials are tweaked so hard that you are having to do totally different stuff on Nightmare that you were doing on Hurt Me Plenty.
Right. You might just have to think a little bit more about, like, you probably don't spam the super shotgun as much, because you're going to save it for, But, so that's kind of, and I think overall that's my issue with it, is there's just, this is not an uncommon criticism of the game, as you said. Yeah. There's just so fucking much going on. Every level kind of feels like a project if you want to 100% it, and Doom 2016 had some of this too, because it has a lot of the same kind of collectibles. I feel like, and again, it's been a couple years since I played it to completion, it didn't have quite as much, and the levels were not as long or complex.
So, in general, the levels are longer in Doom Eternal. One thing I do think is fascinating, because it's like a criticism I've seen in a lot of places, is like, there are too many like upgrade systems and stuff like that in Doom Eternal. It's like, it has the exact same number of upgrade mechanics, and they are the same upgrade mechanics from Doom 2016. The only one that is different is that the health, armor, and ammo upgrades can also have like that extra little ability associated with some of them. That's the only addition, other than like there's a few more armor upgrades. Although even then, there's not that many more. Mostly it's that they split out the frag grenade and ice grenade to be their own trees instead of having that be combined. The upgrade mechanics are almost identical from the last game.
But I didn't love them in that game either.
Yeah.
So, like, it's and I think it's also just a kind of an attitudinal thing of, like, yes, Doom 2016 had too many upgrades and shit also. This one has, I think, too many upgrades and shit. Plus, it's just, like, the size of the levels, the maximalism of, like, the challenge and the kinds of, big phrase they throw you in are just dialed up to 11 from the beginning, and you're going with that the whole time. I don't know if I can even put it into words, except that by the end, and there are some specific like design things I don't like that we can talk about later, but like for the most part, it's more of a feeling I get from the game's just sense of overwhelming maximalism, and the fact that it doesn't feel quite as like perfectly in a line as Doom 2016, even though I think it's better in many other ways. Is that I got to the end and I felt kind of exhausted with the game. Mm-hmm. Whereas with Doom 2016, I got to the end and I immediately went back and did a full second playthrough. And I got every single trophy. I have a platinum on that. And I kind of was hoping to do that on this one, but then I realized I would have to do a whole new playthrough on the extra lives mode to get the platinum.
Yeah, like I'm not going to specifically go for the platinum because they also have some of the multiplayer stuff.
The multiplayer's not good in this game, and
I haven't touched it at all. I'm like, I'm not interested. Like, I don't care.
Yeah. So anyway, and I just felt kind of exhausted, like I wanted to move on to other things, and that was so not the feeling I got from Doom 2016, even though by most metrics we judge games by, I think Eternal is the better game. I think it's got better level design, I think it's got better combat design, I think it makes you use better use of the actual like combat tools they've given you.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of, the music is better, the graphics are, we've got to talk about this feels like a next gen game we got as an early Christmas present. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
There's so many things I like better. It really is, like, if I were to point to specific things it does worse, it's stuff that frankly from a gameplay perspective doesn't even matter that much, like the story,
Yeah.
And me feeling like it's maybe like, I do think it's overstuffed with collectibles, like the fact that, you'll have to remind me if Doom 2016 did this, that you can get way more of all the currencies than you need to 100% stuff.
Doom 2016 does the same thing. The reason why they do that is so that, because I like this, because it means that you can, for the last few levels of the game, there's like 2 or 3 levels that you can be fully upgraded for, instead of like, yeah, I got all the upgrades, time to go into that last boss fight, and you never get to use them.
Yeah.
Doom 2016 did the same thing.
But why not do different collectibles and stuff in the levels, or like make fewer of them? Like, why am I still going and getting
so that way you don't, so even if you don't necessarily get absolutely every single collectible, you can still get, because part of it is like they put collectibles in the last few levels even though you can have everything you need by the time you get to that point. But if you didn't get everything, that means there's some stuff for those players to get.
I don't like that. Don't think about those players suck. I'm kidding. But I don't know. I didn't like that.
Like for me, like that's a like I would much rather. I think they could have had like, here's like an extra bonus or something you get if you did absolutely get 100% of everything. But I would much rather have I can play a meaningful chunk of this game with a fully upgraded character, rather than what 90% of games do, which is I got all the upgrades and then now I'm done playing the game and I never get to use any of it.
Yeah. Although I do think, like, this is where I do think Doom Eternal loses something by having so many upgrades and stuff, is that, and this is something where I guess Doom Eternal makes me think of it more than Doom 2016, because Doom 2016, we talked about this last week, had so many more elements that you just never used. Like, you were never incentivized to use the chainsaw that much, or
like the frag grenade hologram and like health sap grenade, I forget what it was called. Like,
I forgot about that.
There's more like different grenade types in Doom 2016 than are Doom Eternal. Nobody knows that because you never use them.
Exactly. And so I think because Doom Eternal is tighter on that, it also makes me see where there is slack, because you use so much of what they give you. The parts that you don't use and the upgrades that feel like I don't care about this, or like that's such a small thing I'm never going to fucking notice it, that makes me realize those more. And it makes me really want to see a Doom 3 where they just tighten the ship a little bit, and like really like, because it's all in place. I feel like there's just some fat on the sides you cut off and make it feel like fully entwined there that this is missing. So even then, this is the weird split in my mind, is the things I'm describing are things it objectively does better than Doom 2016, but I weirdly notice the flaws probably more than I did in Doom 2016. And I don't know what that is.
Because like the suit upgrades in Doom 2016 are mostly useless. Like there's a couple, and they're ones that are shared with Doom Eternal, of like switch weapons faster that are like, that's nice. Or like things show up on the mini map, or like the map you can bring up that are like the question marks where the secrets are. That's a good upgrade to get. But most of them are just like, your grenades recharge a little bit faster. It's like, great, I don't use those anyways. Like that game has a lot of just like, okay, I guess I'll spend the points on this for like the whole second half.
Yeah.
Whereas Doom Eternal does have some of those, but I feel like it has way more upgrades in that feel like, oh, this is a meaningful, especially playing it on a Nightmare and being like, oh, fuck, like right before you get that dash refill upgrade, like that is a really meaningful upgrade, because it's like, oh, fuck, it's taking forever. It's not, it's like half a second or something, but it feels like it takes forever for your dash to recharge. Like, those upgrades are meaningful up till probably like the 2/3 mark, where then you're like left with the, oh, and now it shows you which kinds of collectibles they are instead of just being a question mark. Like, great, thanks.
Yeah. Right, that's not something I need. I will find it when I'll know what kind of collectible it is when I pick it up, because I'm going for all of them. But yeah, I mean, so this is, I don't know, maybe it's just like the time of year I'm playing it, maybe it's an attitude thing. There are, like I said, specific design things I don't like that I can point to, and we can get to that. But overall, I mean, I also don't want to get too negative, because there's a lot of this game that's absolutely fucking incredible. I agree that I think the amount of variety they go for does dilute the storytelling a little bit, but I will 100% take that variety, because this is something first-person shooters are just historically bad at, is level variety.
Yeah.
Not level variety, but like aesthetic variety, too.
Yes.
And I don't want to say Doom 2016 was bad at it, because I did enjoy all the levels, but it doesn't have a ton of variety.
No, yeah. You basically have like industrial facility on Mars, and you have Hell. And those are the two environments. And it's like, here's a slightly snowy looking industrial facility on Mars, but it like reuses all those kinds of assets, whereas like Doom Eternal has just what feels like a staggering amount of like unique environments, unique things that you're like moving through and stuff like that.
Yeah, the only other FPS campaign I would name that feels like it has this degree of variety is like Halo 3.
Yeah.
Like it's ones that make a really concerted effort to like make everything different. I mean, I think it's level 2 or 3 in Doom Eternal. You get to one of the areas on another planet that just, it looks like fucking God of War. Like God of War 2017 or whenever that came out. And like that, but like Doomified is so cool, and they keep doing things like that, where it's like it's this kind of environment but Doomified, and it just feels like that sense of adventure of like getting to see what they're gonna do next. Boy, I haven't had that feeling with a first-person shooter in a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, it's a very like, I mean, it's not, you're going to like different dimensions and shit, but it has a globe hopping style to the levels that is a lot of fun, because most games go for the very like, here's like the one kind of set of environments that we have, and that creates a nice set of like feeling of flow in those environments. But there's something about this like it feels very old school. It's like playing a Sonic the Hedgehog game or Mario game or something. It's like, and now you beat this level and you're in a place that just looks completely fucking different.
Yes.
It's like, awesome, great. I don't want to be in Green Hill Zone Act 7 or whatever.
Or certain portions of original Doom campaigns. Like, not every original... I've been playing through some of these, and not every one of them does this perfectly. There are obviously a lot of reused assets, but some of the original Dooms will totally throw caution to the wind, and like you'll be in a totally different place. Like, I was playing through the second Doom 1 campaign, and like it totally does a bunch of weird shit like that. And I love that. And yeah, I mean, it does get the feeling like... I don't know about you, Sean. I totally felt by the end of this game, it's like they designed these levels and then figured out a story. That's so obviously what it feels like.
Yeah, it's a lot of it definitely feels like man. It sure would be cool to be in like a place that looked like this, and it like it manufactured power from dead souls. It's like, that sounds like an awesome level to build. Probably that'll be somewhere near the end of the game. Yeah, that would make sense. We'll figure it out later.
Yeah. I mean, because the story, by the time the game ended, I was like, what was the story? And I had to like put it together in my... It's not like it's unclear, but it's just in my head. It's demons are invading Earth. You have to kill the 3 priests. It's kind of a series of different sort of fetch quests for Doom Guy to find the things to kill the priests. Then it's... Okay, the high priest, the con maker, wants to do this thing. To find the con maker, you're going to have to go here, here, and here. And so it's very much that patchwork kind of old school video game story, some of which I find charming, but I actually think the game would have maybe benefited from some of the satire Doom 2016 did. To like, if they lampshaded it a little bit, like it would be funnier to me. Because I think you could do the jokes about it, and it would be a little better. This game winds up taking itself weirdly seriously.
Yeah, I think like someone on Twitter like described this, and I thought it was like, this is a good way of thinking about it, is that the game feels like the first game feels like RoboCop, and this game feels like the RoboCop Saturday morning cartoon. Like it's very He-Man in terms of it's like, it's a very like gory He-Man, but it has that sort of like the way that it's so ridiculous but taking itself seriously feels like Transformers or something like that, or G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
And there's a certain amount of like fun that is derived from that, but it doesn't feel nearly as sharp as that first game did.
There's no single moment that characterizes Doom Guy in this as well as the cut to credits in Doom 1, or cut to the title in Doom 1 where he just breaks the fucking screen while the dude is talking to you, and he's just like, I don't want to listen to you, break the screen, cut to Doom. Like, that's such... And they have so many moments like that in Doom 2016.
Yeah, they definitely aren't as good at the, like... Because they abandoned the, like, keeping the game almost entirely first-person thing, which I think is probably a mistake. I think I would have preferred just... As much as I like playing through it on Nightmare, I'm wearing, like, the classic Doom Marine outfit, and because it's all in-engine cutscenes, you are in whatever you like costume you picked, so that's, like, a lot of fun to see. But I think it would have been stronger if they had just kept it first person almost 100% of the time, the way Doom 2016 was, because those little moments of first person characterization you get in this game are really good. Like, you have that one at the beginning of the level where you go meet Samuel Hayden again, and it's just like Doom,
everyone's scared.
Yeah, it's the Doom guy walking around, and like all these people with like clipboards, like when wearing like lab coats, looking up and seeing it's you, and just like mouths agape, like the clipboard falls on the ground, papers everywhere. There's like back out of the way. There's like one dude with a fucking key card on a lanyard, and you just grab the key card and just drag the guy across the floor and use it to open up a door. Like, those little moments are so good, and Doom 2016 had a lot more of that stuff, and this game uses a lot more of that kind of narrative space to flesh out like lore stuff, which is mildly interesting because I like the ridiculous over the top hell lore, and like the angels, which is basically what like the con maker and the sentinels are. But it is not as fun to me as just watching Doom, like all these other people trying to tell a story, and then Doom Guy just breaking every single thing in front of him. Like the best moment in Doom 2016 with that stuff is, I think it's the third or fourth level, where Samuel Hayden is telling you how important Argent energy is. It's like the energy crisis on Earth, and I have solved it using Argent energy. Now you need to very carefully remove this lens, and then Doom Guy just punches the thing in front of him and it explodes. He's like, what have you done? You have no idea the cost of what you have just done. And Doom Guy just walks away, and you go and like do that to like 3 other things and just blow the whole facility up. It's like, this is great.
Oh, and I think it's no surprise that probably my favorite Doom Guy moment in this is when you go back to meet Samuel Hayden, and he's in the chamber getting like repaired, and you just rip him out of it and take his half robot body back to your ship. That's like, the game definitely, there's something about the story that clicks into place when they bring Samuel Hayden back. Yeah. He and the Doom Guy play off each other very, very well.
I wish that they had brought him back earlier in the story, because it's about the halfway point, because I'm just about to get into the level where you meet him for the first time in my second playthrough. And I think if they had brought Samuel Hayden in earlier, I think it would have like focused the story a little bit better, because Samuel Hayden as this like weird, mysterious Optimus Prime sounding motherfucker that's just like waxing poetic about all this stuff while you're just going around and breaking everything and not giving a shit. Like, it's a really weird but very effective like comic duo between the two of you.
I will say I was very surprised at how straightforward the ending of this one is, because it's basically you beat the big Final Sin guy, and then it's
the
over.
Final Sin, yeah.
And I was just sure Samuel Hayden was up to something, and it was going to end with some kind of he's done something bad, and either it would be a cliffhanger or like a twist on the final boss, and that never happens. And I was a little surprised.
Because I still think that their end game is to have S. Hayden be Satan. Like, I think that's where that's heading, right?
Yeah.
Because he has that kind of attitude towards him, that, like, this, like, deceiver kind of thing. And I think if they make a Doom 3, I think that's the direction that they will go. But yeah, it would have been nice to have, like, a little something to kind of, like, tease that. Because you're right. They do just, like... You blow up the Icon of Sin, which is the last boss from the original Doom 2. So they're like very insistent on you end the first game fighting the Arachno like mastermind or whatever from the end of Doom 1, and at the end of Doom 2, Doom Eternal, you fight the Icon of Sin. So I don't know what the last boss is of Doom 3, but I guess they're locked in to do that again also.
Well, how many... I mean, one, it could be Doom 64, which is kind of the original Doom 3. Yeah. Might be where they go, because in the canon they make it very clear that the sequence of Doom 1, 2, 64 is canonical for this Doom guy.
Yes,
because
whatever the events of Doom 3 happened to, that was a different character. Yeah. Maybe that happened in this universe, but that is not this character.
Yeah, so maybe it'll be Doom 64, or Doom, the new Doom 3 is going to be fucking full of flashlight jokes. You just know there's just going to be fucking everywhere flashlight jokes.
This is just it's just lots of jokes about flashlights. And the original mod was called the duct tape mod, which is the best flashlight joke from Doom 3 is just naming the mod, the duct tape mod. There's going to be lots of rolls of duct tape in like your room or whatever in the fucking Doom.
I know we're like looking ahead now, but it would be very funny because Doom 3 is more survival horror, is my understanding.
Yes, yeah.
It would be great to do like a parody of that where they kind of set that up, but Doom guy will have no part of it. And it's just like smashing through shit instead of doing the careful like going around the corner. That could be a very funny way to like start Doom 3 2022 or whatever.
Yeah, like maybe you start and you think you're playing as Doom guy and it's just like, man, I'm moving so slow and it's just like I just feel so weak and it's just one of those like video game levels where you're like supposed to die and when you die you just see like Doom guys just like boot come into frame like as your like body is on the ground.
He grabs your gun.
Yeah, he grabs your gun and you're like your yellow key card or whatever and then your like viewpoint shifts to Doom guys. Maybe that's what they do.
That would be so good. Id, you can have that for free.
Yes, please take it.
All right. Anyway, what were we talking about? This is the thing about this game, though. There's so many good little details around the corners that are so fun to talk about. Because I think we were leaning into this. Can we just talk about the fucking visuals in this game?
Yes, yeah.
Oh my god. If you haven't watched the Digital Foundry breakdown of this game, it's fucking fascinating because this game is like hugely more ambitious than Doom 2016, but also like way more efficient.
Yes.
Like it loads faster. It seems to have a lower it certainly makes my system. It doesn't feel like it's kicking into like high gear as much.
No, yeah.
It's just it's a smaller download. Like all these different things. And it runs at this like pretty near solid 60 FPS. And it is one of the most gorgeous games ever made. Again, gorgeous, kind of a weird thing to use for this game. Yeah. But there are some like genuinely like awe-inspiring like vistas you will see, and just the fidelity on display and like the scope of vision and the amount of what they're doing. This and the new God of War are the two games from this generation that feel like next gen games come early.
Where they do things and you're like, how the fuck is this game like this? Like God of War, we talked about this last time. We were talking about the SSD stuff.
Yeah.
But God of War has that like jaw-dropping, just like mic drop moment of the cutscene that starts at the top of the mountain, follows you all the way down the mountain through a portal into another dimension, like totally seamlessly. And you look at that and you're like, how the fuck did you do this when like every other game is having you like shimmy through little cracks and stuff like that every 5 seconds? And this game has just this scope to it with like a scope to it that is the kind of scope you expect from a retro game or an indie game that is like a 2D game that has like that level structure where it's like,
it's easier to make assets.
Yeah, it's so much easier to make assets, and it's like, and you kind of like need to, create this sense of visual differentiation, aesthetic differentiation in your levels. And most big budget 3D games just don't have that because it's so expensive. And yeah, like that Digital Foundry breakdown is incredible because they got like access to id Tech 7, so they got access to like being able to capture footage of like the tools and how they work, and like the decal system and the way that they kind of like take the assets that they did generate and have like really dynamic tools that allow them to make those assets more unique and just like add different elements to it to add more detail and things like that. It's so fascinating, and it just like that it makes sense then when you look at that of how you take this game and you give it this kind of huge breadth, because it just is so much more efficient. And it is stuff of like the load times are so much better that I kept on being like shocked, because I had just replayed through Doom 2016 where the load times are fine, but they are like a thing. And so when you
die, you have to wait.
Yeah, when you die in Doom 2016, I'm going to check Twitter. I'm going to look at, I think I got a text message. Let me look at that real quick. And I kept on doing that in Doom Eternal and looking up and being like, oh, this game I just could have pressed X like 30 seconds ago and just gotten into the game. And it's just like that over and over again of realizing, oh shit, like this game just loads. It is so efficient at loading on restarts that it's just like, it's that thing of like that like next gen feel of the, somehow they like solved the hard drive problem, at least for this game. I'm sure that like a huge amount of like engineering effort and ingenuity had to go into making this game efficient in those ways. But it does feel like like this is a preview of what it would feel like to play this game and not have to have the constant load time thing be a problem. It just feels like, oh, this is like the kind of load time you kind of got a little bit on like the original Xbox or PS2 generation when we first moved to DVDs, and it felt like, oh man, we've kind of solved some of that load time bullshit from PS1. And then very quickly we're like, nope, big load times again, big load times. This is like, nope, it's pretty snappy. It's not immediate, but you get back in there pretty quick.
And also that this is running at 60 FPS.
Yes, yeah, and it's so smooth.
Have you ever seen a game that's looking this good and running at 60 on a console?
No.
It's unprecedented. I mean, so it's kind of like when I feel like, when like I see, so my brother has a nice gaming PC, and I see him running like Witcher 3 at 60, and my eyes glaze over because I'm like, how does it look that good? What the fuck? And you would just never imagine running Witcher 3 on those kind of settings on a home console. But this feels like I'm looking at a PC version of the game, even though it's not. I'm running it on the fucking Xbox One S. Yes. And it's perfect. It's like, how? It's amazing.
Yeah, like you're playing, because I'm, playing on the PS4 Pro, so I would like, my expectations of performance would be a little bit higher, but the fact that it runs that well on both the original PS4 and the Xbox One S, obviously with like resolution downgrades and stuff like that, but nothing like, no huge cutbacks. And that's tech that is 7 years old at this point. Those consoles came out in 2013.
Yeah.
And it's like, how the fuck do you go from a lot of those games? Like, this is that, like, end of console generation moment we're having. This is the, like, Uncharted versus Last of Us kind of thing.
Exactly.
Where you look at, like, how the fuck do we go from a lot of the stuff coming out in 2013 that could, like, barely run at 30 frames per second at, like, 900p or 1080p, and now we're here? It's crazy.
Yeah, because on Xbox One S, I'll just say the really only sacrifice is it's running between 720 and 900p. It doesn't matter. Like it's. I think if I were running it on like a 4K TV, I would notice it. But if I had a 4K TV, I'd probably be running it on a different system. I'm running it on a 1080p TV. It's totally fine. There's moments where I'm like, that's a little blurry, but like all the visual effects are there. I think according to Digital Foundry, it has a few more drops, but by and large, it's still 60. Yeah. And there's certainly not, with a game this crazy, you don't really notice the drops, I'll say. I'm sure they're there, but I don't really see them. It's out of this world to play it on this system. And
like they have that level of performance, and there can be like, it feels like significantly more enemies on screen than there was in Doom 2016.
It's nuts. I mean, even in like the first level, there's ones where I'm like, God, this feels like the end of the game in Doom 2016. Yeah. This is the beginning of the game for Doom 2020. That's wild. Yeah, and like not just that, but some of the enemies are so much more complex graphically, and
you have a bunch of different enemies on screen at the same time, and like some of those, like the last couple of Slayer gates or those master levels where they just like crank it up to 11. It's just like, and it's still running perfectly at 60, and like it looks great. I mean, obviously part of that for the Slayer gates, I feel like, is they've constructed a very small, tight box so that they can cram as much into it as possible, so they're not like wasting anything on it. So those, I feel like, it's one of the reasons why those can really go fucking wild, because some of those go fucking wild with the number of enemies they throw at you. But it is just like, it has this very magical feel to it. That is this, like, this is just a technically masterful game. Like, that is the best that this generation has seen in those ways.
And obviously Doom 2016 was very accomplished, but I don't think it felt like an outlier to me the way this does. It felt like this is a very polished current gen game, but it looks like a current gen game.
Yeah.
You know, the running at 60 is impressive because so few games, even FPSs, do it at that level. But still, you know, but this one just it's a clear step up. It is clearly so ambitious, but has the actual technical acumen to like build that ambition out.
Yeah.
What the fuck are they going to do on the next gen console, Sean? With that kind of like, it's what we asked last week, because I think my example was I want to see what the God of War people do. Now it's like, what do they do with like id Tech 8 on the PS5 and the Xbox Series X? Good God.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, one thing from that Digital Foundry breakdown, one thing that like is probably they said is like one of the main things choices made early on that really benefit this game, but it makes me sad because I love this word, is that they're not using mega textures anymore. Back in the day, I think it was for Rage 1, like that was a huge thing on whatever version of id Tech it was at the time, is that like mega textures, which is like this way of sort of like compressing and compiling your textures, so that was like effectively read as like one gigantic texture file to the hard drive, and there's like all kind of stuff about like why that was better for the 360 and PS3. And then that seems to have been like a thing that was like a really cool innovation for a very specific set of technology that worked really well. And then once we didn't have those limitations anymore, mega texture stuff, like, because if you go like look at other Digital Foundry breakdowns, I think specifically was the Wolfenstein The New Order, they talked about how that stuff like hurt the game in specific ways. That's like they've finally cut off no more mega textures, but goddamn is mega texture not like the best video game term since blast processing ever.
They might as well just name their engine that.
Yes,
like to keep it going. Yeah,
because I just want to be able to say the words mega texture sometimes. I just like it. It sounds good to me. It's got a good mouthfeel. Mega texture.
Absolutely. But you know, the upside of all this is just the art direction in the game is extraordinary. There's so many different things. I think the one that probably captured my eye most was I forget that it's like Necropolis. What's it at the end? The Necra...
yeah, let's just call it Necropolis. It has a more specific name, but that is what it is.
It's a 2-part level, and it's part 1 and 2, and that's where you get the cages full of human bodies and stuff. And it's because that one is like a really super well done version of the hell levels in Doom 2016, but like taken to a whole other degree. What it specifically reminded me of is I'm like, because Persona 5 does something like that at the end when you go down into like the prison and there's all the people in the prisons, and I'm like, what if Persona 5 had that art direction of just these piles of bodies? But it's like, it's such a wild thing to see, and like some of the arenas they put you in built around that are so crazy. Those were probably like visually maybe my favorite levels, but there's so much variety.
Yeah, because right after that it's like the second to last level is the level that's in like on the Maker homeworld.
Yeah.
Which is the only level that's in that environment, and that's one of those where you're like, these people are fucking crazy. Like, it would be like if they only had one hell level in Doom 2016. It's like you created all of this stuff for one level. You're not reusing any of it. Like, it is just entirely this one level. That's fucking nuts.
Oh, it's such a good level.
Yeah.
I don't love the boss fight, but like the level is so good.
Yeah.
And it looks so good. And like, yeah, there is this like, I made the God of War comparison because some of it does have that God of War sense of like Norse sort of style architecture, but to this crazy degree that would never exist in the real world.
Yeah, that has this like soft, like sci-fi kind of quality to it. Yeah,
yeah, and Doom obviously doomifying all of that.
Yeah, you get that stuff in. I think it's the second level where like halfway through the level you go into hell, and that's where like you're in like the remains of some ancient battle where you have like these like rusted old giant mechs.
I love that.
Yeah, like have giant Titan demon corpses like impaled on energy spears and shit. And you're going around like activating this giant cannon and blowing the wall open. And it's just like that. It's when when Doom most sort of powerfully evokes the like heavy metal album cover aesthetic, which I think that level is maybe like the best one, or some of the stuff with the Icon of Sin in the last level. Yeah. You have this like giant towering demon monster destroying the whole city. Like, that's when the game's aesthetic is at its absolute best, is you're just looking at the decayed remains of this ancient war between the demons and the angels, basically, and it's so fucking rad.
Oh, it's rad as shit. It is heavy metal as shit, and then you've got fucking Mick Gordon tearing shit up under it. I didn't think you could get better than what he did in Doom 2016, and he did.
Yeah.
It's better. It's like it's got more variety. It's I noticed just a lot of like the sort of low parts where like it's not full intensity are way more interesting in this one. Like he's got a lot, like there'll be just like an interesting guitar lick going on softly while you're exploring or doing platforming. It's a lot of the weird like sounds that are clearly made in a synthesizer with like very odd waveforms and shit. That's just it's this great mix of music. And I was saying this to you, Sean, off the air. I had a very hard time finding a good 30-second clip for our theme song this week, and that's honestly praise to the game because it doesn't kind of work in the sense of discrete tracks. There isn't an official soundtrack out, so maybe it'll be done in such a way when the official soundtrack comes out. But it's such a video game soundtrack. It is so responsive to what you're doing as a player. Like, even better than what Doom 2016 did. The music just feels like an extension of everything you are seeing and doing with the controller. And I don't think I've ever seen a game do that kind of thing better. Yeah, and especially since they, take you to so many different kinds of environments that kind of pushes McGordon to find different places in the music to go to match those environments. So it's it definitely feels like the game's sort of like environments and stuff stretch him to kind of like come up with more and more different sort of way. Like, how does this like crazy moon based sound in this like style for Doom? How does this alternate dimension like Angel World? How does that sound for Doom? And then again, all the different ways that it sort of like layers on top of itself, depending on what you're doing, whether you're in combat, out of combat, like the intensity of the combat, all that kind of stuff. Like, I just have to imagine that like the easiest decision made when they decided to greenlight a sequel to Doom 2016 was get McGordon back to do the soundtrack. Like, that has been like the first thing. Like, okay, we're going to make a sequel. It's like, okay, should we keep the creative director? Well, before any of those decisions, someone fucking call McGordon, make sure that he'll do a sequel to the game. What would be the point of making it without him? Yeah, I mean, the whole identity of this like new era of Doom, I feel like, without Mick Gordon's music, it's not what it is. Like, it's what ties it all together. It's if you don't have that underlying it, like, it gives the energy. It kind of it strikes the right tone. It tells you kind of what it's going for. It tells you how to play it. Like, there's so much that is embedded in that music in a way that, there are many, many great video game soundtracks, but it just feels like the music is like what you would see if you just laid what you were looking at on a waveform. It's wild. Yeah, it's so perfect. And I'm excited for whenever they do an official soundtrack release. Official soundtrack. Back to the graphics, like, they're putting out an art book for this game. I would have never thought I wanted to buy a Doom art book. As much as I like Doom 2016 and the classic games have cool enemy art and stuff, right? But I would never have thought I would like want to pay $30 for an art book. I kind of want the Doom Eternal art book. It's that good. That's amazing to me. Because it's also stuff of like with the aesthetic quality of it, is the enemy design is also great. Because there's a couple of elements of like, one, I like that with a lot of them, they kind of went a little bit closer to the sprite art from the original Doom 1 and Doom 2. So they like read really clearly. Especially like the zombie soldiers that are one of the main enemies in the original Doom, and they weren't really. They had like I think they called them Hellraisers in Doom 2016. That kind of filled the role of the zombie soldier, but it wasn't that, and it was like I was kind of missed them, and then they're back here, and it's like that is that like sprite made into this really gorgeous 3D character model, and everything with like the Arachnotrons, and like the Barons of Hell and the Cyber Demons. The fucking like Pinkies and Cacodemons and the pain. Oh my god, the pain elementals look so good. They look those creepy motherfuckers. I have to just give praise to the Cacodemons. They look better than ever because I remember them being kind of muddy in Doom 2016, and like when I've been playing through the original Doom, I'm like they're these bursts of color you get in the middle of Doom levels, and they still kind of fill that role. And there's nothing better than using your fucking meat hook shotgun, flying up to a Cacodemon and pulling its eye out. Yes, it is. And the enemy design all over the place. Both like redesigns of like the classic demons are great. The new ones also just look fucking rad as shit. Yep. It's they like feel very like true to the Doom aesthetic. Like, I'd be very interested to see someone take stuff like the like Whiplash, the snake things and stuff like that. The new ones they made for this someone probably has done this. I could probably just Google this, but someone to like make the sprite art like original Doom version of this, because I bet you could, and make them look pretty good. So it's like that whole element, but then on top of that,
another tech thing that is really rad is like the deformation of the bodies. So it's like they just like chunks of them blow off when you shoot them in a very like Mortal Kombat-esque way that just looks fucking crazy. Yep. And it feels very like the Mortal Kombat games from like the original Xbox generation, where you had more primitive 3D models, so it was a little bit easier to just like lop off a big chunk of them, and it just like looks ridiculous. And here it's just especially some of them like the Hell Knights that have a lot of health, you're just like, God, dude, just stop. Like, you barely have any skin left, dude. Like, you really should just like back off and reconsider what you're doing, because like it's a lot of exposed bone and muscle, and it's gross, but it also means that like every attack you do has this added impact to it, because you really clearly visually see the kind of damage you're doing on the enemy, which is both great in like a readability in terms of like gameplay sense, that it's like you can tell when you're doing damage, but it also just like has this, you know, cumulative effect with all the rest of the visuals to like really add a huge amount of impact to the way the game looks.
Absolutely. Oh man, what was I gonna say? The glory kills.
Yes,
they are.
Holy shit!
Because there's nothing we really need to say more about them mechanically. It's the exact same as in the last game, and it is such a good core gameplay loop. But I think they've made the animations even better. And I'm just amazed you can go through a whole game doing that and not really get tired of it. Mm-hmm. And it's because there's a variety, and there's also just such a great kind of tongue-in-cheek pushing it just far enough that it's not really, it's gross, but in a like fun way.
Yeah, I think the decision to give the Doom guy basically a giant machete that's attached to his arm, like that was a good choice, because it adds just like, that's one of the main things that adds a lot of variety to them, because there's definitely a lot more, and they feel more like creative, I guess, than the Doom 2016 ones. And it's like, it's because in Doom 2016 at a certain point, it's like you're seeing like slightly different versions of what were like the exact same glory kill, because there's only so many things you could do, whereas combining the big machete arm thing and just like the normal cracking skulls open, all that kind of stuff you did in Doom 2016, there's just a greater sense of like visual distinction between them. And yeah, they're gory as fuck, but they are very satisfying. And I'm still seeing new ones fairly frequently, because there's a lot of just like, you know, if you never killed this like relatively rare enemy and do like the glory kill from like the back left side or something, there are lots and lots and lots of them that you're not always going to encounter against some of the rare enemies. So you're still... I've played a lot of this game, and I'm still seeing new of them every once in a while, and it's really cool.
But I really can't stress enough how much my favorite one is when he pulls their arm, breaks it so the bone comes out through the skin, and then pushes the arm so the bone stabs them through the head. Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah. It's so beautiful.
I am a big fan. Like, this is a very simple one, but I just draw a huge amount of pleasure from it. Is the one on the main one, like just facing them on the front with the whiplash ones, where you just like cut them half and then like cut like the top half in half again. Just like you just slice them into thirds, and it's very fast, but it's just this really satisfying. There's a certain like Looney Tunes, like all the pieces are hanging in the air until like looks down kind of effect to it that is very gratifying, especially because those enemies are pains in the fucking ass.
I know.
So when you kill them, it's just like I'm just chopping you into little like sushi bits, motherfucker.
It's so good. There's also, this is a pretty simple one, but it's on a pretty basic enemy type where you punch and then you rip their chest open like you're a fucking surgeon. Yeah. Just opening up their chest, and then I think you like rip their heart out. Oh, that one is, because that's one of the gnarliest ones in terms of like hearing the bones cracking and everything. Man, the sound effects in this game, the whole sound design, it's masterful. But yeah, do you want to talk about any of the specific guns? I mean, they're mostly from the other Doom games, but they've been updated, and there's some really interesting things
because
going on.
I think they're all... Yeah, they have like it's only guns. They didn't add a new gun, which is interesting. Like some of the attachments are new, although a lot of them are the same attachments from the last one as well. The only like one that I think got a major overhaul is the gun that in Doom 2016 was the Gauss cannon became the Arbalest. And they kind of toned... That's the one that probably got the biggest change, because they toned it down, because the Gauss cannon was so fucking powerful. Because Doom 2016, basically, by the time you get to the second half of that game, you're only really using the super shotgun and the Gauss cannon, and maybe the rocket launcher every once in a while, or the Gatling gun if you want to mix things up a little bit. But that game was so weighed so heavily in those two weapons' favor that they kind of... They toned both of those down, in the sense of the super shotgun no longer has the ability that Doom 2016 had, where if you fully leveled up the gun in Doom 2016, you could fire. It basically operated like a normal shotgun. Like you fired a super shotgun blast, but it only took one shell, so you could fire it twice without having to do the reload animation, which was just ridiculous. It was so powerful. And here they don't have that, so the super shotgun occupies the appropriate place in the weapon environment that it is a super shotgun. It is the shotgun, but it does a lot more damage. But you can't fire it as quickly. And
you also are more ammo starved, so
so like using up 2 shells is particularly the first half of the game, is a more important decision. But how they compensate for that to then make the super shotgun fun to use is they give it, I think, the best ulti-fire in the game. It's so good that I bet that there are a lot of concepts for, well, what would be another weapon mod we could put on the super shotgun, and nobody could come up with anything that like anybody would ever pick. That's not the fucking meat hook.
Yes.
That you just launch it, grapple onto an enemy, and then fly towards them. Or, and this is especially fun to do if you have the rune that slows down time if you're pressing L2 in the air. You can shift laterally around, so especially for some like the shield guys, you can hook to them and then grapple around and swing around behind them and come around behind them and shoot them in the back, which is very fun to do.
Nice. I didn't know that.
Yes, yeah. I only noticed it when I started using it with that slowdown rune. I'm like, oh wait, I can kind of move a little bit in the air and you can get some distance on them.
There's the guys in the last couple levels who are I forget what they're called, but they're the like priest things with gold heads. That you can only
like the maker guys.
Yes.
The maker drones.
Yeah, and you can only do damage to their head.
Yeah,
and like they give
but when you pop their heads, they then drop like a shit ton of ammo,
yes.
which is a very good mechanic.
So the main way you're kind of tutorialized to do it, and there's a challenge in that level to kind of teach you, is you use the assault rifle and you put on the attachment where you zoom in and do the one big powerful shot.
Yeah,
and you just pop them in the head like that, and you get a headshot. It's great, right?
Yes.
But I also found, like, okay, I didn't want to do that every time, because sometimes in the heat of battle, like, you don't have time to, like, stand, aim, all of that. So what I would do is, if you meat hook them and go in and do it at the right moment on an upswing, you just blast their head apart by using the meat hook and the super shotgun. Best way to kill those guys, because you blast them apart, you're flying through, you get a bunch of ammo, and then you turn around and start messing shit up. It's great.
And then especially if you fully upgraded the super shotgun, then you get the one, it sets them on
fire. Yeah,
so,
you get ammo,
so then you're just getting
armor.
armor. Yeah, every time you blow them up, it's just like... Yeah, they really, and this is like true across the whole combat spectrum with Doom Eternal, is that they just like found ways to balance the game a lot more effectively than Doom 2016, which was not particularly well balanced, like in comparison with Doom Eternal, but without ever making it so that like whatever it wasn't fun to use anymore. Right. It just wasn't something that completely overwhelmed every other option you have.
Like, I found most of the guns more fun than their equivalents in 2016.
Yes.
I really I think it might just be because the redesign visually is so good, but the plasma gun I love the plasma gun in this.
I think it's also just quite a bit more powerful. Like, it feels like the plasma rifle in the original Doom, where it's like it uses up its ammo pretty quickly, but especially on weaker enemies, it just completely fucking shreds them. And especially now they explode when you kill them. If you like don't go in for the glory kill, they just fucking pop.
That's great. And then it also has the heat release one where you build up heat, and then I used that all the time. It was one of my main go-tos in the game because it really helps with big crowds. I loved the chain gun a lot. The chain gun with the shield attachment was really useful for a lot of big guys. I think the assault rifle is way better, and I like both of its attachments.
I think the standard shotgun and the assault rifle are probably the weapons that got the 2 biggest improvements, because those are weapons that you just never use past the first 2 levels. As soon as you get something that's slightly better than them, as soon as you get the super shotgun, you're never using the original shotgun in Doom 2016. As soon as you get the plasma rifle, and then especially the chain gun, there's just no reason to ever use that heavy assault rifle. But in this game, the weak point mechanic was such a smart addition that gave both the standard shotgun and the assault rifle this whole other role to occupy in the weapon wheel, which was, for the standard shotgun, is the fucking sticky grenades, which I think is the best grenade launcher in any first-person shooter. It is just perfect. It's so satisfying. It's the fucking best. And the precision shot, which was useless in Doom 2016. I don't even know why they had that mod in that game, because it's just like, you just would never use it. It occupies this really valuable role of, I need to just destroy the cannon on that thing right now, pull out my assault rifle, jump in the air, zoom, shoot the thing, and it's like, okay, now switch back to super shotgun to deal more damage. But they found really valuable places for both of those guns to occupy, And honestly, I think I probably spend most of my time just on the regular shotgun running around popping grenades on imps' heads and just watching them explode because it's so fucking fun.
Yeah, it's great. I think that weak point thing is interesting because there's a couple of enemies later in the game that I think they do it poorly with, but for most of the ones that you meet, because they're enemies that recur a lot,
yeah.
And I think it's great that you can exploit the weak point and like be focused about it if you want, but it's not the only way to kill them, and I really like that. I think that's really key because there's one enemy in the game I hate with the passion of 1,000 burning suns, and it's called the Marauder, and we'll talk about it later, and there's one way to fucking kill it, and that's what I hate about it. The other one's like the arachnid? No, what is it?
The arachnotron?
Arachnotron. You can do the pop on the head, and certainly early in the game I would do that every time.
Yeah.
There are times, though, when you have so many enemies on screen, and the arachnotron is not there at first, but it'll spawn in, and then you are running around the map, and you're like, oh shit, arachnotron, I don't have the time to like get a beat on it. I'm just going to pull out my fucking plasma gun and run around it shooting, and then I'm going to release the heat and blow it up.
Yeah, or it's like, I'm just going to, okay, it's rocket launcher time. Like, it's just like, I'm just going to lock on, fire, forget, like, you're just dead, move on with my life.
There's the big guys with 2 guns for hands.
Yeah, the mancubuses. Yeah.
The mancubuses, it's great to do the shoot on both of the arms. It's also fun to just throw the meat hook at them, set them on fire, come at them, and then shoot them in the head. Like with the super shotgun, if you do it right, you can do it in 2 shots and blow those guys up. So I like that there's variety there.
Yes, especially once you get like the full suite of abilities you have, there are lots of different ways to solve whatever situation you're in the middle of. Which like, and the one weapon that like I didn't use for a while until I kind of figured out how to use it was the arbalest / ballista.
And I never got to the point of using it much, so I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are.
Because at first it was just like, because it is pretty significantly less powerful than the Gauss Cannon was. Because the Gauss Cannon in Doom 2016 on Ultra Violence would kill mancubuses in one shot if you did the basic, like it was called siege mode in that game, but like the charge up shot that you use like the weapon mod for, it would just melt almost anything in 1 or 2 shots, and it was just fucking ridiculous. So for that game, like basically all you did was use a super shotgun for like 90% of the enemies, then like a big thing like the mancubus shows up and you kill it with the Gauss Cannon and move on with your life. In here, it's not powerful enough to do that kind of damage. But it does do a lot of damage, and especially once you do the Arbalest full upgrade, which allows it to begin its charge immediately again if you've landed that shot. So there's like the rate of fire increases pretty dramatically. That one becomes pretty useful for killing some of like the really powerful enemies in the game. That's a really powerful one for the Marauder. It's also really good on stuff like the Doom Hunter, and like when they start throwing what were boss characters in as just like normal enemies you fight. It's really satisfying to just be on the ground, break out the arbalest, like load up that shot, and then fire it and be like dodging laterally with your dashes while like your thing is constantly charging up again and again and again because you're landing each shot. And then it's like 3 or 4 shots and the whole like Doom Hunter's like thing explodes and you can kind of take care of them. It took me a while to kind of figure out how to fit it into that, but it is definitely, I think it's almost better suited as the role that the Gauss Cannon filled, which was, this is the thing you break out only for the most powerful enemies in the game. You need to do like really high amounts of damage in like 1 or 2 attacks. But it's not particularly efficient for anything else. And so you don't have to use it for anything else. And it like, I think they could have maybe like crafted the first encounter you have after you get it a little bit better to kind of incentivize you to use it in that way. But once I kind of figured it out, it became like, this like fits much more naturally in the scope of what this game's asking me to do with my weapons than it did in Doom 2016, where it just overpowered everything else.
Yeah, because I used it a little bit. I never got to the point of fully figuring it out. I'm sure if I played more of the game, I would. But I mean, again, it's a big weapon wheel, and that's the only gun that I can say that about. That's pretty good. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't think there's many other games you can say that about. Yeah, if any. So yeah. We've been saying a lot of good things about the game. I'm going to lay my 2 design criticisms out.
Okay.
I mean, there's more than 2, but just significant ones.
Yes.
I don't like the bosses in this game. I generally don't like bosses in first-person shooters. I think they're bad. I don't like them here, except for the last one in the game. The last level I think is great. I love that. But it's more of just a normal big Doom fight. The Marauder makes me want to slit my goddamn wrists.
So the Marauder is like the big controversial enemy in this game. Lots of people hate him. Like he's not my favorite enemy, like certainly not. But like I don't have a big problem with him. So
here's my thing.
Yeah,
obviously lots of enemies recur multiple times in this game. It's not like you're getting new enemies in every level. But with a lot of those enemies, the process of fighting them is pretty fluid. You can do. We were just describing it. Like, you do not. If the Mancubus had the same kind of set phase you kind of had to do with him every time he showed up, the game would fucking break because there are so many Mancubuses and you would get so bored so fast.
Yeah.
The Marauder, like, he shows up at least once a level for like the whole last half of the game, and sometimes multiple times. And at least in my experience with it, it's the exact same goddamn thing every time, which is that you can only hit him when the eyes flash green, you get a shot off, then you get another shot off. The only gun I could get to work to get that first shot off on him was the super shotgun. So if I don't have super shotgun ammo, I've got to go find ammo. He takes forever to kill. He takes you have to go through like 5 fucking animation cycles with him. You have to clear everyone else out just to have the space to fight him. I hated it. I thought it was okay as his own boss when he's first introduced. Again, I think the single kind of one-on-one boss fights in Doom don't work for me really at all, but it was whatever. It was fine. I got through it. When he starts showing up as a normal enemy, it's so repetitive. It's the only parts of the game's combat that feel like an actual slog to me, where like the game has to slow down. It does not fit in with the normal rhythms. I hated it. It honestly, it was a real drag on the last half of the game for me. And if I could point to any one thing that would hold me back from playing through the whole thing again right now, I don't want to fight him. If they put out like a $10 DLC to patch the fucking Marauder out of the game, I would buy it. I hate the Marauder.
Yeah, like I think it's fair that like I think there are a couple of other ways that you can deal with him that's not just the super shotgun, but there's certainly not a lot. Like the remote detonated rocket launcher can work because you can get it behind him. Same thing with the frag grenades. You can get damage on him if you can get those behind him because the shield only pops out in the front. But like the main strategy for him is eyes flash green. You're like, you have to maintain your distance and like kind of do the little dance with him. His eyes flash, shoot him with the super shotgun. Like the best strategy that I found was use the super shotgun to knock him out of that attack animation and then quick swap to the ballista. And just get a normal shot because that does so much damage that like 2 or 3 of those and he's dead.
Yeah.
So it is definitely like it's that thing of where like I got to the point where like the Marauder fights were interesting to me because it's the only enemy in the game. Well, him and like the Archvile, which is the guy who like spawns enemies. He's only in like the last 2 or 3 levels,
which I liked. That was a really interesting thing.
Those are the only 2 enemies in the game that when they show up, you absolutely have to deal with them. And like if you're not trying to kill them immediately, you're trying to create a situation in which you can kill them. Because both of those, because the Archvile, if you leave him around too long, he's going to spawn more enemies, and while he's on the field, he makes them more powerful. And then with the Marauder, because he's so proactive about going after you, and because it's like very difficult to do damage to him without like really just trying to do damage to him, you have to like give him a lot of focus. It means that as soon as they show up, it totally like flips the battle on its head. And I liked that because it meant that there's only a handful of battles like that. I think it's like 6 or 7 times the Marauder shows up. There's like maybe 4 that the Archvile, like that guy's very late. But it makes it so that sort of like last third or so of the game really feels like you're not just doing the same kinds of encounters, right? Like you.
But
you
the
have
Marauder is the same every time. He is.
But like because the first couple of times it's just him. But then they start throwing him in with fights that have other demons as well, and that's how it gets different, at least from my perspective.
I guess so.
It's like you have to adjust the way you're like moving around and like thinking about the whole battlefield just changes completely as soon as that guy shows up on the field.
I guess so, but if they did it once, that would be interesting. But because of that, it means it's just a normal Doom arena fight with a Marauder at the end, and you clear everyone out, and then you do the Marauder fight.
Or you can take the Marauder out early on if you can get the space for it and do it. Like there's,
which I just never could figure that out because there's so many things hitting you at once. Like I don't know, and he's got the stupid fucking dog. I did not like the Marauder.
Yeah,
it honestly, it really heavily reminded me of the boss they make you fight 5 times in Halo 5.
That's not fair.
It's so bad. I genuinely think it's a bad piece of design in this game.
I disagree. I think he is like I think he's easily the most difficult enemy to deal with. But like once I kind of got my head around it, it wasn't a thing that like it was like because he fits into the same classes of enemy to me as like the Whiplash thing and those guys that like generate the little like energy. Not the guys who have the shield, but the ones that like make them. They are enemies that are like annoying to deal with, but them being annoying to deal with makes them way more satisfying once you take them out and you get back into the normal regular flow.
I like, because the other ones though are so much more of the platonic ideal of it for me, which is that they show up, they're annoying, you do want to deal with them right away, but one, you've got a lot of different options on the table for that. It kind of breaks it up, you go take care of them, and then you get back into it. It doesn't completely break down the whole thing for this really static, like what feels like a very scripted fight with him.
I feel like I feel like there are other things you can do, and you can be more active in that fight than maybe how you're approaching it. Because I wouldn't say that it feels like scripted to me.
It feels very scripted to me. Mm-hmm. And it feels like a real drag on the game. Especially, and he shows up like 3 times in the last level. It's so much.
I think like maybe I don't remember how many times he shows up.
Okay, It's at least 2, because he's on the roof, and then he's in the later one of the big ones inside like the mall you're in. And I think there might be one more, but it's at least 2, and it's too many. I hate the Marauder, but that's okay. What do you think about boss fights in general?
I'm generally fine with them. I think the only one that like I didn't love, like I didn't like hate it either, was like I think like the Icon of Sin fight I think was like a little bit much, just in terms of the only thing I had with that fight that I didn't love was like some of his attacks just caused so much like screen shake and shit like that going on that it was just like annoying, because I was trying to deal with stuff and like everything was going so crazy that I'm like, okay, like it's fine that he has like giant meteors and shit like that, but like pull back a little bit just so I can see what I'm doing. That was the only time that like the boss fights annoyed me. Generally, I didn't find them like, they're not like my favorite part. I think I like them more or less more than Doom 2016 because they felt a little bit more distinctive. Like none of them were as kind of like tedious to me as the Cyber Demon fight in Doom 2016 that you do, because they feel a little bit more kind of unique, I guess. I like the Gladiator was the one that like I enjoyed that fight quite a bit.
Oh, that one, he's got the giant shield.
Yeah, the guy with the huge shield, and you destroy his shield, and then he goes buck wild. Yeah,
I think I liked that one the most in this game. I mean, I actually really did like the Icon of Sin at the end. I like that it's just this giant fucking crazy Doom fight with this big guy who you have to shoot, and it's like there's not some dumb special like series of events you have to go through to get to hit him. It's just you're firing at him, you're getting the different pieces off. The animation's really cool. It feels like the end of the world. They give you lots of stuff on the map so you can be using the sword and all your different shit. I liked the Icon of Sin fight a lot. I really didn't like the Con Maker fight.
I didn't have a problem with that one. I feel like I just sort of like here's like a pro tip for Doom Eternal is the fully upgraded micro missiles are ridiculously powerful. So it's like I felt like it's just
long and repetitive to me. It's got like 5 health. You have to do it like 6 times.
Yeah, but like if just a full round of micro missiles just like melts that shield and you just go up and like I went through that one pretty quick.
Yeah,
so I just like that one. Just it didn't even make much of an impression on me. I think parts of it, like I just was like well suited for that fight, because also that's where you have a bunch of those like maker drones on the field, so you just like replenish ammo really really quickly if you're doing it.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something about I generally feel this way in first person shooters, that I think boss fights are a bad idea. I think they I just don't think like that style of gameplay is well suited to them. I
generally agree. Like I think it's like I think they're better than most. Like compared to
absolutely.
I'd say like Doom 2016, which has like one boss fight that I like, but has like a couple that I'm like, this is whatever. But certainly there's nothing that's it's not like Half-Life 1 that has just like the end of Half-Life 1 fucking sucks. It's not there. I never had like a boss fight that I'm like, this sucks. It's like this isn't as fun as doing the normal kind of combat in this game.
Yeah, it's just, and I guess that's my feeling, is that if there's a part where it's like, all right, well, I'm going to get through this to get back to the stuff I like, just cut those parts. I don't want them in there. Should we talk about the Fortress of Doom?
Yes.
Which is awesome.
The ridiculous fucking hub world.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I do wish there was more stuff in there. Like with all the different extra upgrades you get in the last half of the game that you just can't spend money on, like the Praetor tokens, there should be like a fucking slot machine where you get extra music or toys or something.
Yeah, some bullshit, yeah.
Because, and I know you're not in the Fortress of Doom a lot in the end, but you go back there at the end. How cool would it be if like what do I do with these 11 Praetor tokens? Oh, fuck, the Doom guy got a slot machine or something crazy. Like that could have been really cool, and I was disappointed there wasn't. But I love that it is this giant, crazy ship that you go around and you get some extra upgrades in, and you display your vinyls on the wall, and you put all your toys on your fucking dash. It's great.
Yeah, the Doom guy has like a throne that he reads like gaming magazines in. It's just like a very ridiculous fourth wall breaking weird hub that like it makes it feel that like I'm curious what their like ongoing plans are for Doom Eternal, because like obviously they have like the multiplayer mode that I don't really care for, but they do have stuff like these ongoing challenges that they can cycle in and out. They have these master levels that they're going to start putting in. I wonder if part of their plan is to eventually, and I hope would be the case, that they add more like single player style content that remixes things more heavily and stuff like that. To like,
I think they've said that what's the paid DLC is, right?
Maybe, yeah. I have not looked up a lot of that stuff because that's like what the Fortress of Doom feels like. It's like situated for is like a fun place to come back to, and like there's a couple of secrets in there and stuff in between levels. But it just feels like this comfortable. Like here's this hub where you can go in, do your mission select, do your master levels, do whatever you want, and it all kind of like lives in this in-game environment. And it's not just on a random menu. And that I think is just like a fun way to house all that different kind of stuff.
Yeah. They've said it's 2 single-player expansions is what's in, like, the Season Pass. And then they're also going to have everything you said. But yeah, it sounds like they've said specifically, you know, all the DLC, paid DLC for the original was multiplayer stuff. Nobody wanted that. Everyone asked for more campaign stuff. It sounds like that's what they're giving. Like, I just saw one of the main development leads saying that, basically. So that's good.
Yeah.
I do it. So I've played a little bit of battle mode. It kind of baffles me. There's one multiplayer mode in the game. It's battle mode. And it is an asynchronous sort of 2-on-1 multiplayer where it's not really asynchronous, but it's so you either play as the Doom guy on your own team, or you play with a partner as a demon, and you can like pick different demons. And then if you're the demons, you're trying to kill the Doom guy, and if you're the Doom guy, you're trying to kill the 2 demons. There are specific levels kind of based on places from the game, but they're specific like little arenas. And there are other like computer-controlled demons, and you can go around and do your glory kills and normal stuff, but it's a little different. And then, of course, you have to kill the 2 big demons, or if you're the demons, you kill the Doom guy. It's kind of cool to get to play as the demons, but it's a lot to hang like that. Like that's the mode. Like that's it. And there's like 10 achievements for it. It's very bizarre to me. I don't know why, because I actually kind of liked the multiplayer in the original. I don't think it's great, but I felt like it was a solid foundation to build on. And it's just, there's none of that. There's no competitive...
because the original game was just like a very standard, generic style, like deathmatch, team deathmatch, capture the flag sort of stuff.
But there's no deathmatch in this at all. There's just this one mode, and I don't... I guess I feel like, why do it? It's kind of like, why is it in there at all? If it feels kind of... I don't want to say half-assed. There is some cool stuff about it, but it's not like... I played it a little bit, and like, this is not something I would come back to and play regularly.
Yeah, I haven't touched it because I just don't really care.
Because there were multiplayer achievements in the original, and I played enough to get the platinum, and I enjoyed my time with it. I didn't go back and play a ton, but it was like, that's fine. So who knows? I'm a little confused by it.
Yeah, I mean, like, one of the things is, so the multiplayer to Doom 2016 was not actually made by id, that was made by Saber Interactive.
Yeah.
Because they, like, did a lot of stuff on, like, Halo map packs and stuff like that. I know that in Doom Eternal, they didn't want to do that again. They wanted to, like, try to make some multiplayer thing in-house, and that's probably one of the reasons why it's, like, pared down.
Yeah.
That's that that one mode thing is like, well, let's try to come up with a multiplayer thing we could do. Like, I'm my guess of why it exists is just, like, as another, like, way to kind of, like, try to make it an ongoing service kind of thing to incentivize DLC and all that kind of stuff.
No, it's a first-person shooter. First-person shooters, by law, have to have a multiplayer mode. Yeah. It's weird, but that's how it goes. I guess Wolfenstein didn't do it.
No, Wolfenstein did not do it.
Yeah. So good for Wolfenstein. But anyway, it's fine. Like, it's not a drag on the game. It doesn't hurt
like the single player
right?
is more than enough to justify the cost of the game.
Yes.
Like, it is a fully featured, like, luscious fucking big single player campaign.
It's a long, too. I mean, it's a long first-person shooter campaign.
Yeah.
I don't just mean in terms of levels, although there are a lot of levels, but just it takes a while to play. It's probably like 20 hours to beat, maybe more. I mean, it depends on how you played it.
Yeah, it depends, like, on difficulty, stuff like that, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what else to say about Doom Eternal here at the end?
Fun.
It's very fun. I think I would kind of compare it to different sort of movies. For me, I would compare it to different movie sequels I like that I think have maybe storytelling problems or some kind of cohesion issues. Like, this is in my head because I'm watching through these movies again, Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, where like, okay, they went too big, there's too much in here, but good God, the direction is so virtuoso, there's so many fun sequences. I can't dislike it. Doom Eternal does not have that depth of problems, but it reminds me of kind of like the Hollywood sequel that goes a little too big, but you also respect the ambition. That's kind of how I feel about Doom Eternal. Yeah. But I also want to recognize that the core of it is so ridiculously good that it's never going to get to the point where like I would say don't play this game. If you don't like shooters, don't play this game. That this would convince you. But if this is at all in your wheelhouse, it's an obvious must play.
Yeah. I think one thing that's interesting about it, and we talked about this some last week, is I like that this game feels like it is its own game. It does I wish it was called Doom 2 Hell on Earth because I think that joke is very funny.
Yeah.
But I think it's actually in many ways appropriate that it's not called Doom 2 because it is not a like here's a level pack for the original Doom, which is basically what Doom 2 was, with like a couple new enemies, new levels, a new weapon, but like no big extreme changes. That's not what this game is at all. Like this is one of those sequels where like I think it's unlikely that if you didn't like Doom 2016 that you would be like, oh, but Doom Eternal is really great. But I think I can imagine that person. I can absolutely imagine someone who wasn't totally sold on Doom 2016, that was not absolutely in love with the combat model in that game, that then plays Doom Eternal and falls in love with it. I think that those people exist because the game is different enough. It's like objective and self-identity is distinct enough, which I think is, for me, like what I actually want. Like, if this game had come out in 2018, I think I would have wanted the, like, here's the Doom 1.5, couple new weapons, new enemy types, a new campaign, find out what's happening with Samuel Hayden and go with it. But the fact that this game took like 4 years to get out here, it is like way more interesting and satisfying to me to kind of feel like Doom Eternal and Doom 2016 are really closely related games, but they ultimately occupy different spots in my head. And they kind of exist alongside each other, like not with one like dominating the other or anything like that. They are just like, these are two kind of like brother games in a way that kind of exist in this sphere, but they each are very much their own thing. And I think that's pretty rad.
I completely agree. I like that. Like, I was surprised by how different it is. It takes a little bit of adjustment. Like narratively, it does not follow it. Like Doom 2016 actually has this kind of funny cliffhanger where Hayden pushes you through a port. Like that, it doesn't follow up on that. I don't think you have to have played Doom 2016 to enjoy this one.
No,
it'll help onboard you a little bit for like the style, but other than that, you don't have to. I mean, you should because it's a good game. Mm-hmm. But I like that about it too. And I think the title is kind of dumb, but I also like that it's sort of its own standalone title. Doom Eternal seems good. Mm-hmm. I see why they didn't call it Doom. I mean, calling it Doom 2 would have been confusing for one.
Yes.
Because it's already confusing.
And calling it Doom 2 Hell on Earth would have been especially hard to Google. Yes. It's like, not only is the title the same, the subtitle is the same.
Yes. Can't wait for Doom 3. Or maybe they just call the next one Doom 64 and just really fuck with everyone.
Yeah, Doom 65. It's the sequel to Doom 64 we've been waiting for our whole lives.
Yep. And Doom's in a good place right now because literally every game in the franchise is easily accessible on soon-to-be all consoles because Doom Eternal, Sean, it's easy to forget, is also coming to Switch.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow. I knew Doom 2016 came out. I didn't know that they were planning on that with Eternal.
They announced it. When Doom Eternal was announced, it was announced. It's been delayed. If they had to outright cancel it, I guess it wouldn't surprise me. But they've committed to it. You can go pre-order it. I don't have any idea how that will work.
No. But I would be... it was impressive that Doom 2016 and Wolfenstein 2 came out. It's certainly not impossible that Doom Eternal will come out.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see
but that's what
the plan. It could commit to in terms of frame rate and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Doom 2016 did 30, and pretty much it held 30. It looks blurry. I don't think
there's some stuff in this game. Like, I'm normally not like a frame rate is the most important thing to me. It's like I like a high frame rate is good, but it's not like the end all be all for me. There is legitimately stuff in this game that I don't know if I would be able to do in less than 60 frames per second because it is so much more so than Doom 2016. It is a very physically demanding game of the player in terms of controller input.
But I like that id and Bethesda have committed Doom, Doom 2, Doom 3, Doom 64, Doom and Doom Eternal are on all the major consoles. Yep. Most of those, all the classic ones, are really fair priced, like $10 or less. I mean, Doom and Doom 2 and Doom 64 are all $5. That's nuts. That's a great deal for any of those games.
And for people who heard, how kind of a mess a lot of those ports were at launch with Doom and Doom 2, they are really good now.
They're so good.
Bethesda / id went back and did a couple of big patches.
Yeah.
They are, For me, like the gold standard is Doom on XBLA from the 360 generation, because that's how the main way I played it.
Yeah.
I think the game, since Doom doesn't have vertical aiming, I like actually much prefer it on a controller based on compared to a keyboard, or like playing Doom with a mouse is like wrong because it was not designed to be played with a mouse. So like that was my preferred way to play the game, and then now I put quite a bit of time into the PS4 version, and that is a great fucking port of Doom.
Great port of Doom. Doom 64 is one of the best HD remasters of an N64 game I've seen. Like, it makes me salivate for other N64 games in, like, nice HD widescreen, you know? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's a good time to be a Doom fan. If you are at home and fresh, if you're reading the news and being like, what did Trump say about letting everyone in Michigan die? Okay, I'm going to go kill some demons.
Yeah,
Let me pick a Doom game.
Yeah, if you're frustrated by not being able to kill the demons of our society, you can at least kill the little demons of hell in your Doom game of choice.
Yes. At some point, we're going to have to play through all of them and do some kind of Doom episode, I feel like.
Sure.
But we shall. That'll be down the road. All right. Sean, anything else to say to the folks this week?
I like Doom. Doom is good.
I like Doom.
I'm very eager to get back and finish my Nightmare playthrough, because it is, once you get into the flow, this game is very addicting.
I am excited to get through my Nightmare playthrough of Resident Evil 2. That's not a reference to difficulty. That game is just a nightmare. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited to play more Animal Crossing. Got to get them bells. And we'll be back next week with, I'm sure, some news and stuff, but also will be our next Weekly Suit Gundam on Mobile Fighter G Gundam. Lots of good stuff coming your way.
Yes, very good. And I'll just be patiently awaiting the major Doom game they have not ported yet, which is, of course, everybody's beloved Doom RPG, which is a real game. I played it on my cell phone. It's good.